One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Sci-Fi and Friends, episode number 66. We're getting close to that 70 mark, and yeah, my goal is 100 at some point, hopefully in 2022. If we keep doing the quota of 1 or 2 a week, we'll definitely hit it. So we have our delicious Bearded Lady coffee. It's right downstairs, so we're always getting it. And it's good stuff.
Excellent.
Go check them out, yeah. Alrighty. My guest today is Dr. Joey Pogue, a recently retired professor.
Indeed, yes.
How's retirement treating you?
Pretty good. It's not like flipping a switch. You had to get used to it.
Right.
And of course, with the COVID thing, there was another dimension put on, another layer of getting used to. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I like it. Get up and do whatever I want. You know?
Yeah. What were you teaching at Pitt State?
I was a professor of communication.
That's right.
Mostly media analysis and criticism and gender, family communication, interpersonal. Sometimes I'd get into international communication. The very subjective stuff that's challenging to talk about, and as well it was fun too, you know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, interpersonal and family and gender. There's a few things going on in those areas now that are challenging to address.
Yeah, it's very interesting evolutions of that topic.
Yeah, it's yeah. I came to PSU I think around 2004, and so I finally, when I first got there, I was pretty much told what to teach, and a lot of times I had to learn just on the fly what to teach. But my areas that I focused on with my graduate degree are gender communication, interpersonal, and family. And eventually I got to where I taught those courses, and they went really well. Yeah.
Are those seem based like psychology based, almost therapeutic? You know? Like,
yeah,
I guess they could be. They don't have to be.
Well, one of my professors in grad school told me, he said, if you want to teach almost every subject, teach communication, because it addresses every subject. So
yeah.
there is a kind of an intersection there between psychology, sociology, history, for sure. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of psychology involved, and I'm not really a trained psychologist per se, but we did explore a lot of that kind of stuff.
Like actually have clients and sessions, almost like marriage counseling or something?
Well, not so much that. Well, we did some experiments that were kind of close to that, but you know, I'm not a therapist or anything, and sometimes I would tell my students, look, I'm not a therapist, because
that's what I say too.
It could be challenging. I mean, one theory was Bowlby, I think's theory of attachment theory, and we worked that into interpersonal and family and gender, and you know, that theory says however you're treated, I think the first 2 years of your life, that's an imprint that you will deal with for the rest of your life. And so if you come from a functional family, whatever that is, then but if you come from a dysfunctional family, which whatever that is, then you're going to grapple with these issues. And a lot of it translated over. I also directed theater, so I directed I think 3 shows when I was at PSU, and my department chair she recognized the fact that I like to go into these issues, and so I directed 2 Ibsen plays, and then another more modern play about which dealt with family, and so I had to have some pretty strong actors who were willing to go there within themselves, and tap into those issues, and put it on for an audience that was also grappling with those issues. And so that's not an easy task.
Not at all.
And I was probably not known for for being easy. I think I was respected, but a lot of the students, it was too much for them to handle. And
You mean like the depths of
the depth,
emotional
yeah. I mean, if
exploration, I
you
guess?
take on a role like Nora in A Doll's House, which I directed, I mean, she's definitely a different sort of character, and she addresses some issues, even though the play's a couple hundred years old. She addresses some issues that a lot of people are dealing with, both men and women, and it took a mature person to pull that off. And I have a tendency to want to go there myself, and so it was hard. But the more challenging, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no doubt.
I don't know, if we don't deal with these things like today's world, I mean, we're going to have to deal with those hidden parts of ourselves that we don't want to look into if we're going to get along. And right now is a time when I think there's a need for us to get along, and it's it's not working out too well in a lot of ways.
So far, not so good.
Yeah.
I will say that it seems like the globe is somewhat united against Russia.
That's a very pleasing sort of thing to see.
It really is.
Yeah. There's a. I mean, we're all relational creatures.
Sure.
We're all embedded in an interactive relational world. We can't make it as in isolation. We can't.
Well, that's like the worst sort of torture.
Yeah, and
Solitary confinement for 30 days or whatever.
Yeah, it may appear to be appealing to take on the role of a Richard Cory. Remember Richard Cory, Simon and Garfunkel?
Okay. Yeah.
They say that Richard Cory owns half of this whole town with political connections. Anyway, Richard Cory, he had his books and his poetry to protect him, and he was an isolationist, but he ended up putting a bullet through his head.
Right.
Because we need one another, you know, and we need one another in such a way that once we get together, it's impossible to control the outcome as much as we'd like to, and those are areas that I like to look into, and some people appreciate that, some people don't. But
yeah.
I don't see any other way
than to get together,
to learn to
coexist.
Love one another, learn to get along.
Yeah.
I mean, to go straight into the heart of the matter. And in my opinion, the first thing we have to do is find out what we are doing to feed that conflict. First of all, we focus on ourselves, because that's the only thing we can change. We can't change somebody else.
Right.
And then if we become, the other person can see us doing the work on ourselves, maybe they find that attractive, they do the work on themselves, and then we both put our cards on the table and we talk about what is, not what's supposed to be.
Right.
I mean, in our culture, we seem to be almost obsessively, compulsively addicted to the supposed to be rather than what is.
For sure.
Yeah, and so rather than being who we are, we project a profile of who we're supposed to be, or who we'd like to look like we are. Like we have phrases like, well, put your best foot forward. You know,
fake it till you make it.
You know, what the hell does that mean? You know, that means set yourself up by telling a lie about who you are, so that later on you're going to crash and burn.
Yeah, right.
That doesn't work.
Build a false scaffolding of reality and deal with it, the collapse later. It's like Wile E. Coyote off the cliff, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
It's all good until
and
you look down.
And usually that, you know, whatever we do that becomes worthwhile and most meaningful to us takes effort and hard work. I'm not talking about self-made man stuff, or I'm talking about work on ourselves. Hawthorne even wrote about it he had what was called the allegory of the human heart. He says you step inside your own heart and it's like, it looks really pretty. It's like a nice looking paradise, and you go a little bit deeper and it gets scary, it gets dark, and monsters start coming out of the walls, and you want to turn back and go back, you know. But if you stay with it long enough and you get to know who you are, who you really are, it's a relief, and it feels good once you get there. But you know,
how does he describe the center?
He says it's dark and it's scary and it's terrifying, but then if you stay with it, there's this light that opens up, and it's like, and I think that sort of coincides with Maslow's idea of self-actualization and that kind of thing.
And I would also say Jung's idea of incorporating the shadow at some, dealing with the shadow and not demonizing it, but I guess you would say incorporating it and kind of using it to your advantage, knowing that dark power is there.
Yeah, it's kind of like a tutor or something, It's like somebody you can turn to for enlightenment and not to run from.
Yeah,
because if you run from it, you got to spend all your energy running, and you can't do anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, that it presents you with a barrier that gets in the way of you finding out who you really are. And sometimes I think we perpetuate that.
Yeah, based on what we focus on, right? If we focus on, like I've heard people and myself say, I don't want to become like this person.
Right.
And you're focused so much on not becoming that person rather than focusing on becoming a different person, a good person, or a more disciplined person, or whatever, that you become that person because you're so focused on not becoming that.
Yeah, I'm a child of the 60s, and I jumped into that whole counterculture thing when it first hit, and I wanted to be the radical hippie vagabond flower child, and all of a sudden I woke up one day and I realized that's who you are. And it was like it was nice, some of it, but some of it was not so great.
Was that because when you wanted to become that, you only looked at the good parts, the shiny parts, and didn't understand the whole concept, I guess?
I tell my students that I'm really just a hillbilly with an education. I'm from Missouri. I'm from McDonald County. I lived in the country, and there were a lot of expectations in my small town that really kind of limited my options. While I followed some of them I resented, and I felt like a prisoner. So when the counterculture came along, and I jumped into that as fast as I possibly could. But then, like I said, I woke up one day and it was like, that's who you are now.
Yeah.
Because I remember I had dropped out of school, which I did that several times, and went back, and which is another story. I feel like that in terms of being a teacher, I was pretty good because I had the book knowledge as well as the worldly knowledge, and a lot of that I failed at stuff and then picked myself up and came back, and it gave me insight, and that's the reason why I became a very I feel good about that. I was a pretty good teacher. There are some students that will say no, he wasn't, but some that would say
they're wrong.
Some would say that, but it's like I went back to school one time, and my hair was to my shoulders, and I looked around, and that wasn't the way people were being anymore. And some were, but. Now I think it's just like we don't care what anybody, you can be whoever you want. But there was a time when you couldn't do that.
Right.
I remember.
You're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, right, yeah. I remember I was in Neosho, Missouri one day with a friend, and we started to walk into a restaurant. This was probably about 1967. And before we got in the door, somebody stopped and said, "Not in here," just because of the way we looked.
Did you have shoes on?
Well, it was just sandals. Sandals, long hair. But
just the look alone.
Yeah, and in a sense, that gave me a sense of power at the time. It's like, okay, great. I kind of enjoyed that. But later on, I didn't really want to enjoy that so much.
Kind of confirmed your reality. Like you said, I am that, and now the world is treating you that way. So I'm like, okay, I definitely am.
Yeah. I remember the first time I did some drugs and stuff, and I remember, the whole idea of being a rebellious vagabond hippie flower child to do drugs, and then all of a sudden I do the drugs, and it's like, whoa, I really am messed up, and I can't come down for a while, and that was not a good feeling for me. I subsequently became a little bit terrified of some of the hallucinogenics and that kind of thing, because and my friends said, well, you probably shouldn't take them because you don't need them. You're already nuts. But,
right.
But
thanks, guys.
Yeah, but I just those experimentations and that kind of thing, that was an adventure. But then again, to get lost in it, that's not good either.
Do you think they can be used as tools?
Oh, in retrospect, if you survive it,
that's the key.
If you survive it, in retrospect, it can be. And if it's like I used to tell my students, because in teaching gender, family communication, interpersonal communication, we're talking about how do you construct your identity? How did your family influence the construction of your identity? How does your role as a male or a female or a gay or a straight or whatever, how does that, how is that instrumental in becoming who you are?
Or even like your genetics, things that are passed on that your great-great-great-grandpa just happened to do one time, and it just keeps passing itself along.
And the whole biblical concept of the sins of the fathers, and we probably should say the sins of the fathers and the mothers, even though that wouldn't be received like the best.
Sins of the parents.
The sins of the parents. In family communication, we have this thing called the family ego mass, and so the
mass, M-A-S-S?
Yeah. So it's an ego mass. It's a configuration of all the practices and everything, the very way of being of a family, and you don't appear free of those, because that's where you came from. That's your. So, but if you become aware of them, you can break the chain of each generation. The sins of the first we don't have to repeat it, but it's challenging not to repeat it because we're familiar with it. And but if we can break the chain, then we're free to become who we are rather than who we're supposed to be. Like, for instance, I'll refer to Ibsen again. In A Doll's House, Nora leaves her husband, and she says, I don't want anything from you. I don't want any money. I don't want the way. In other words, she's not going to go to a lawyer and try to destroy her ex-husband. She just says, I want to find out who I am. I know who Dad said I should be, who my father said I should be, who the church said I should be, who my culture told me, but as far as me knowing, I don't know, and I just want to find out. And that's a challenge. It sounds like, well, of course, everybody wants to know who they are, and they'll just go for it. No.
Yeah.
Most people look for what they're familiar with. Too much freedom is very frightening, and so they want a cognitive window framework that will keep them balanced and challenge them on their own time. Well, the framework may be there, but it doesn't mean that the stuff outside the framework's not still there as well, having an effect on that. So.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's like,
you mean to say that the framework doesn't necessarily block or protect you from what you think is outside?
Yeah, I mean, look at the...
Meaning, like inside would maybe be the like a title at a company. I'm the director of operations or whatever,
right?
And I would associate my identity with that within the frame,
which is has been allotted power, prestige, and all that kind of stuff. But what if you put that best foot forward and it worked, and all of a sudden you've just taken yourself hostage because you're somebody that you're not, but everybody thinks that's who you are, and you've got to maintain that image, and instead of being able to turn and say, I don't know the answer to that, and that's what Socrates was all about. Toward the end of his life, he said he just asked questions. He didn't have the answer. And I think it was Jung that said the most perplexing questions that we have about our existence are there's no answer.
Or they could be paradoxical, at the best.
Yeah, I mean, and so rather than there was a Catholic, a Franciscan Catholic priest I listen to sometimes. I'm influenced by Father Rohr, I think is his name, but he said, he quoted Jung and
Richard, is it Richard?
it's
Rohr?
Richard.
Oh
yeah.
I'm a big fan of Richard.
Yeah,
Rohr.
I really like his, his stuff. And he said, when people ask me a question, I don't give them an answer. I give them a response. Because every response, like you're asking me questions now, I'm giving you responses. I hope they're accurate, but I don't know that they are completely. I mean, I'm still in the process of finding out. And, and some of the stuff you never do find out, but you, like Rohr says in one of his talks, you get through it. And by getting it, and then all of a sudden you find that, well, I don't have to have the answer. I don't have to know the outcome.
Right.
And I'm free to be. Take a deep breath and be. And let's see what happens, I think there's a balance.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we can just randomly say, oh, to hell with it all. It'll all, no, there's effort.
Yeah.
There's effort involved. But when somebody comes along and say, well, this is the formula and this is the only formula, you got to follow it this way.
Careful.
Do what the Republicans do or do what the Democrats do.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That's, because in the process of that, they're going to set up these cognitive frameworks that are totally opposed to one another. And then all of a sudden, all we're doing is maintaining the conflict that represents the barrier that gets in the way of us finding out who we really are. It's like.
So you're saying we are distracted by the conflict.
Yeah, but I think
engaging in the pursuit of truth.
Yeah, we're distracted by the conflict, but we're
self-imposed.
We're addicted to it because it provides us with consistency, a consistency that really is not there. But every time I've done a show, which that's one thing, it's one area in my life that so far I don't have to discipline myself that much. I'm just drawn to theater. I'm drawn to the process. I think the more rigorous it is sometimes, the more I'm drawn to it, which it requires a lot of work. But every time I get through a show, first of all, it's never done as well as I'd like for it to be done. But second of all, once it's over, I don't know what to do with myself for a while.
Interesting.
And that's like you were asking about retirement. It's like my wife and I both, realized that what a friend told me was very true. He says, well, if you're going to retire, it's not like flipping a switch and you'll just be okay.
Yeah.
Because we had to go through the transition of all of a sudden, I don't really have to go to work. I don't have to do anything today. Really, not really.
Right. No structure.
Yeah. And it's like, somebody come along and give me some structure.
Yeah.
Even if it hurts, I need some structure because I don't know what to do with myself.
Right.
Even though there's all kinds of stuff to do. I've got a workshop. I do paintings. I play guitar. But there's some days when I'm just like, I wish there was somebody here that would tell me what to do.
Yes.
Because it's up to me now.
Yeah.
And then when the COVID things came along and everything, we were looking forward to traveling and doing nature and all, and it was all of a sudden there was another dimension, and it was like, we really went through a tough time. I think a lot of people are going through a tough time.
Yeah.
But it could be a time of reflection and retaining a sense of balance between that who we're supposed to be and who we really are that could be fruitful if we make use of it. Again, that's a challenge. I don't see anything worthwhile that's not a challenge, though.
Right. Right. Might be the reason why it's worthwhile.
Yeah, and old age is, I turned 71 last August, and it's like I was a runner for a long time. I'm a walker now. And, I had to have shoulder surgery, and it's going to take 6 months to a year. So I used to lift weights and do push-ups. I can't do that anymore. And it's like,
it's a big surgery, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it is. It takes 6 months to a year for it to heal, and it's like sometimes when I'm walking, I'll walk a lot at night and stuff, and it's like I'm thinking, I wonder if this is ever going to get better. Well, maybe not.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting older, and so some of the stuff that I enjoyed before, it's not going to be here anymore.
Right, right.
That's real.
Yeah.
That's not what it's supposed to be. That's real.
Yeah, right.
And so
difference.
to a sense of gratitude and making use of what I do have, that's what it's all about. But sometimes we lose track of that, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially when you're, not necessarily younger, but like when you actually have those things, and you maybe have always had those things. Like, I've always been a strong person, and I took weights in high school and still lift to this day. And so to me, it's always been there. And then this past last May, I tore my pec when I was rolling jiu-jitsu, and I'm totally bedridden, could not, doped up on hydrocodone, recovering, but unable to do anything I could do before. It was taken from me.
Yeah, and that's when you, in retrospect, realize how precious that was.
100%.
Yeah, and so I don't run anymore, and I walk, but my shoulder is bad, and the other one's showing signs that it could go bad, and so I've stopped. I can't lift weights for
We gotta get you on some krill oil,
something,
some supplements.
Yeah,
Get some BP 157 peptides.
I may have to try that. But, and I don't know, when they did the shoulder surgery, they sent me home with the hydrocodone. I didn't take any of it.
Yeah. Probably a good move.
Yeah, I mean, so I'd rather feel the pain now than later,
Right. Right.
And the reason I want that is because I've learned the hard way that sometimes what feels easy at first, not easy in the long run. Yeah, it's like one of my favorite psychologists, psychoanalysts, I guess, was Erich Fromm. I've read a lot of Erich Fromm, along with Jung and Freud. And
was he around the same time as those guys?
Yeah, no, he's a neo-Freudian. He was, I think he left Germany during World War II. He was part of that. Several people left, Germans, and I'm pretty sure he's German. And but he's got several books, and I've read most of them. But he talks about the difference between active and passive stimulation.
Okay.
And passive stimulation is something that makes you feel good, but in order to maintain the feeling good, you have to increase the dose of the stimulation. So,
gotta chase the dragon.
Yeah, 3 beers makes you feel good, but all of a sudden you need 4, and then you need 5, then you need 6, and then you need a little Coke with it or something. In other words, just to stay stimulated.
Right.
Whereas active stimulation hurts in the beginning, but starts feeling better, and you get stronger. Like you get off the couch and you run a quarter. It hurts, but then pretty soon, hey, the quarter's not bad. Then you run a half. Pretty soon you're running a mile. Then you feel better. Your body's better. So it's active stimulation which facilitates strength and endurance of pain, and opens up new options for the pursuit of finding out who you are or whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
So he speaks about that a lot in a book called The Anatomy of Human Destructiveness. And
wow, what a name! What a title!
Yeah, and he wrote the book Escape from Freedom, which suggests
another title. It's like,
well, it suggests that we're freedom. We could talk about it, but freedom's difficult to maintain. I mean, you can say something like that, and somebody say, "Oh, he's trying to be profound and all." No, not really. It's just very simple. Freedom is difficult to maintain.
Right.
It's why, like in family communication, we discuss like 2 married people having an affair. One of them gets divorced, the other one will run like hell because they need that conflict, and so if all of a sudden the other person is free to be who they are and be totally responsible, the other one's, I don't want this game, I want out of here.
Right. They want something to latch onto so they don't have to find themselves.
Right.
Is that
exactly.
Okay?
Yeah, and the conflict,
that's where they can hide.
They're always looking over their shoulder, and so always looking over your shoulder becomes a way of life, and it feels better than not having to look over your shoulder, because if you don't have to look over your shoulder, you can't project blame on somebody else.
Yeah.
Because you're responsible.
Yeah.
A similar pattern would be a married couple, and one of them is a drunk, and the other one's complaining about the person being a drunk, and they sober up. The other one's like, oh shit, what now? It's like all of a sudden he's not drinking or she's not drinking.
Right.
We've got to talk about who we really are.
Oh yeah.
And then it's like,
or who we become. Right?
Yeah, who we become,
and even if it's for the better. Wow.
And you can't say, well, you did this to me, and that was a recurrent theme in some of my classes that I used. Very personal thing. Which, being the counterculture hero I tried to be, and all the dropouts and going back, I had a number of relationships that didn't work. And it wasn't until I looked in the mirror and said, none of these people that I had relationships with did anything to me that I did not help facilitate. It's not their fault.
Right.
It's my fault. And that's when I was finally able to have the relationship I have today with a wonderful woman. We're married. And,
yeah, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah.
You did it during the pandemic, didn't you? Or right before?
Yeah, we actually November 5th. We've been together for a little over 11 years, and we finally got married. The thing is, we don't live in the same house. A lot of people think that's weird, but
you live right next to each other, or
no,
across town?
It's probably 15 minutes.
Okay.
But she's got her house, I've got my house. They're both paid for.
Yeah.
And we'll probably live together sometime, but not now.
Yeah.
But people say, well, where's your wife? And I say, oh, she's at her house.
They're like, excuse me?
Or where's your husband? Oh, he's at his house.
Yeah,
I'm gonna stay with my husband this weekend. People go, what?
Like the first husband, second husband? Like, how many you got?
Yeah. Well, see, my wife was, she took her maiden name back when we got married, and she was filling out a name change thing for some insurance or something. And they said, well, we need to know everybody that's in your household. She said, well, it's just me. She said, well, where's your husband? He said, he doesn't live here. And then they just dropped it and they said, okay.
Right, that's all we need to know.
But again, it's like we have these, what we call praxis or practices, which prop up a framework or say maybe a paradigm. This is how you live. This is how you go about being who you are in this culture. And, we feel a compulsion to follow that script. And it's okay to follow the script, maybe, but maybe the script needs to be rewritten. Again, you deviate from it. So,
right. Or even to know that there are other scripts.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest thing for me, because growing up it was, graduate, go to college, and follow this path, the white picket fence, 2.5 kids, that whole script, and then to be where I am now and look back and it's like, man, there are almost endless scripts that you could assign yourself to and customize in any way that you need to, and pursue and do what you got to do. Follow the path that you need to follow.
Yeah, and that was the mantra of the whole '60s experience, and being the vagabond flower child hero and all that stuff was, I'm not going to follow the script that but then a script that was just as rigid took its place. Exactly. And I learned a lot from all that, all the failures and the problems I got into, but they turned into gifts later on that I used as a professor, as a teacher. But at the time, I didn't know that was. It's like I'm living this way because I'm learning it, and I didn't know what was going on. It was only that I did a retrospective examination of my own choices, my choices. Now, there were times, I'm sure, there's times when we get into it with other people, we have conflicts, and it does not feel good, and we can almost resent other people. But when resentment takes a malignant sort of degree, that's when you have facilitated your own oppression. That's when you resent the other person in a way that's just toxic. It's usually because you had something to do with it, but you want them to be held responsible for what you did.
Right.
And the freedom is realizing that they couldn't have done that to you if you had not agreed to it or facilitated it. And that type of resentment is something we looked at in interpersonal and family and gender communication. And I mean, there's a gender war going on right now. I mean, it's and it's a fascinating war. And I think that if people were to look deep into their own part first before blaming others, I'm not saying that others have not been instrumental in the oppression. They have. There's no doubt about it. But whenever we invite it or comply with it, to take a shortcut toward our own peace and harmony, and it doesn't work out, that's when we really get pissed off at the other person. And if you're really pissed off at another person, ask yourself, did I have anything to do with this? You know, and it's a problematic area, but it's part of that journey inside.
Yeah. And when you talk about that resentment, when it's so, you said malignant, when it's that intense, and then you have to ask yourself, like, did what I did do influence this person? Is it almost so congruent with each other? It's almost a cycle to where, because of the way what I'm doing is influencing this person, and then they do this, and it makes me do this, and then it just, get caught in this forever.
It repeats itself.
Yeah.
There's Fromm talks about in his book Escape from Freedom, a domestic violence situation, and there's a domestic violence. I think it's a wheel. It goes round and round. Like typically, it's the male being brutal toward a female, and she'll get enough of it and call him on and say, "I'm leaving you," and he'll say, "Oh, please don't leave, please don't leave," and he's really nice, and then she decides to stay. And then she stays, and he gets violent again, and it repeats itself over and over until somebody breaks the chain. And that chain, the anatomy of that chain, comes from your own childhood, your culture, what your parents said, you know, what they didn't say. You're grappling with all that in your survival. That's a difficult configuration of stuff to wade through, but the only answer is to wade through it. It's, you know, like I said, it goes back to the fact that we're relational beings. And what's not present, I don't see a lot of it today, but there's an opportunity for it, is empathy, compassion, not holding someone totally responsible. If somebody, let's say somebody takes responsibility, you know, bless them instead of saying, "Yeah, you were a jerk." Well, it's good that you are seeing that, and that's a difficult one to explain. But when I was in grad school, I went back to get my PhD at the University of Missouri, and the first semester, I was in an office with two other guys. We were graduate TAs. We taught the lower level courses in order to get our assistantships and that kind of thing. And I remember we had one professor that was pretty tough, and he was one of the most published authors in the nation. So he was he was intimidating to take a class. And he said, so he sent us off to the library. This was Intro to Grad Studies. It was my first class. Sent us off to the library to do synopses of journal articles, communication journal. So I did that. And we were told when we were accepted in the program, you can't make C's.
Okay. You
can't make C's. And so the three of us were in the office. We got our papers back from the first synopsis, and I got a C on my first paper of the whole program, and they got A's. And I was just beside myself. I was I was difficult. I thought, man, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have gotten involved in this program. And they said, "Oh, relax." He said, "You're taking it too serious." They weren't very.
They got A's.
Yeah, they got A's, and they just weren't very understanding of my situation, and I finally just stopped talking because they didn't want to hear it. Well, the next paper, we got another assignment, same assignment, I got a B. And praise God, man, I got a B, and I felt so much better. They got B's, and they were absolutely devastated.
Yeah.
And in the office, they just, oh my God, I got a B. And it's like, well, that was an opportunity for me to say, well, you thought you got B's, I could have just really run them, gotten in their face and said, you guys are jerks. But I said, I understand, it doesn't feel too good. I mean, in other words, I was empathetic with it. But that's an example of I think there's a lack of empathy sometimes. And whatever situation it might be, if we see somebody, fall in the ditch and they're bleeding, don't go pour salt on them. Maybe don't get down in the ditch with them, but reach down and say, hey, can I help you out of the ditch?
You think it's because people nowadays just have so much to deal with that if it's just like, oh, you think that's tough, look what I'm dealing with type of stuff. Or look what I went through. I
think there's something to be said about that, and I think that the digital world's got something to do with that.
Like separation of face-to-face contact almost?
That and just synoptic overload.
Oh,
I mean, it's like, see, before I retired, I taught one semester online pretty much, and I didn't want to learn online. I mean, I started teaching in the 70s with a typewriter, chalk, and a paper, and
good old days.
All of a sudden, I'm teaching stuff online with a laptop and
like Zoom lecture type.
Yeah, stuff? Zoom lecture type things, and then I taught. I was pretty good at it. I did a lot of thick description because my classes were focused on subjective stuff. But just seeing the wealth of information out there that a student can use to get an assignment done, and even the tools. The PSU is really good at that. By the way, they have a Center for Technology, and so they taught people like me that are not familiar. They made it really. They really do a good job. But just seeing the diversity and the digital strategies and resources, and then what's happening. Like, look at the news last night. You're seeing bombs going off in the Ukraine, and you're seeing little babies crying and interviewing. I mean, it's just overwhelming. And then all of a sudden you've got, I don't know all these things. The students, you got Twitter and Instagram and
TikTok.
I mean, it's just, and so nobody has to be free of what I would call passive stimulation. It's there. I mean, I heard Father Rohr talking about the problem with internet porn, and he was saying, there's several men that he knows that he's worked with that they have learned to fulfill their sexual needs with pornography, and so they don't have to. They don't have to go through the messiness of relating to a real human being.
Right.
And that's just, I mean, they're falling in love with cyborgs, I guess, or whatever you call it. They're not real
pixels.
People. Yeah, they're not real people, and yet they look ideal.
Yeah.
And so.
And the endless stream,
Right.
You can never get, it's like social media. You can never get to the bottom. You can scroll forever, and there will be another story, another picture, another video, another post.
Right, and like
slot machine style.
As I was telling you, as a singer-songwriter, I'm trying to put some of my stuff out there, but at the same time, I don't even know how to use Facebook. I think one time I made a comment on there and it went out to the world, and I didn't realize it, and it was not that bad of a comment, but I don't understand it. There's so many, and so I'm not feeling left out by not understanding it, but I mean, I can see where, I guess there's kids that have gotten, brutally teased, and some have resorted to suicide. I mean, there's just
cyberbullying.
There's something going on there.
Doxing.
It's there's something going on there that's probably not healthy.
Yeah.
It's here though.
Yeah.
And the cat's out of the bag. We've got these resources. It's bewildering. But I mean, like right now, I've got a small part in a community theater production. It's just a small part, but
In Pittsburg?
yeah.
Nice.
And yeah, the Book of Will, which is coming out at the end of March. But I've got a relatively small part, but my iPhone has become my best friend in terms of learning my lines.
Sure.
Yeah. I record my lines, and
Yeah.
then I walk at night and I listen to them, and then my iPhone tells me the weather. You know, I can keep notes on it. So it's a great tool.
Yeah.
But along with all the advantages that it brings into our lives, there's a lot of other stuff and we don't know what's happening to us.
No, it's a real-time experiment on all of us.
Yeah, we really don't know. But I think that at the bottom of it is we are relational beings. And if I have a relationship with a machine, that machine's not going to draw out of me who I really am. It's not going to help me face who I am way down deep. You know,
It shows. It can show you exactly what you want to see, or what you want to feel, rather than, you know, a person that is dynamic. Like, you come up to me and you could say, "Hey, I've been seeing you do this thing," and that could elicit out of me a truth that I don't want to know.
Right.
I don't think the machine. I guess they could, but they usually don't. You know, they're usually like, "Here's another pretty thing."
Yeah, right.
If you pull that mic over just a little bit, it'll.
Yeah. Well, so and then
Yeah, you can just pull it straight up to your face.
All right.
Yeah. There you go.
I think it's kind of a simple way to put it, but it's pretty clever too. It's like if you take the word intimacy, intimacy is challenging, but what does it say? Into me see. Wow. And so, you know, you're saying I'm available for you to find out who I am, but in the reciprocation, I want to know who you are. And you know, a lot of times it gets into a contest. You go first, and then I'll follow. You know,
sure.
I used to call that walking point into the wilderness. You know, because whoever walks point gets shot. You know, first, and draws out the enemy.
Right.
But I think artistic expression, in a way, the artist is the one that walks point. The artist looks at phenomena that we don't want to grapple with and makes a comment about that. And it's not just pandering to what's popular. Right. Even though once you do that, if you get a painting, a sculpture, a song, a play, whatever that really hits home, and everybody experiences what Bakhtin called the aesthetic moment. The aesthetic moment is when it's a brief moment of clarity, when everything seems to line up in the universe and you feel sort of complete. It doesn't last forever because you got to get back on the treadmill. Yeah. But the artist is the person that can facilitate that.
Would you say that's similar to Jungian synchronicity?
Yeah. It's where you discover, oh, this is it. You know, this lines up, and and so the artist, I think, is the person the figure that can make that happen. When I used to direct shows and stuff, I said, everybody I put the cast on the stage, and I say, you're not special. You're a priest or a rabbi or a shaman. It's your job to show a part of the human condition that the people in the audience are grappling with, and they get to reflect on that from the safety of their seats. You're the one walking point into the wilderness. You're the one that's drawing fire. And so
for the audience.
Yeah, you're the Christ figure. You present yourself as the one that gets crucified, so we can see what's behind all that, you know. And
wow,
that's the calling of art.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah. That's artistic expression.
Yeah,
but it's so easy once you hit that mark to then write something that you just want to sell it,
sure,
and make profit. And but I think that the true artists, when they do that, there's something, they feel a loss, I would think, down deep. Some people say, "Oh no, I'm not going to feel a loss if I'm making a bunch of money. I'm not going to feel a loss," and it probably would be hard to grapple with. It would be.
I have a great antidote to that. My brother sold cars for maybe 2 weeks, and he sold one car. I think he made $800 off this commission. So it's a great, great deal. And I helped him. I was like, okay, if you're going to do this car thing, like I'll film you, and we'll build up a social media profile, just how they all do it nowadays. And I still have that footage somewhere, but I remember the pain on his face. And he's like, come see Casey down at the car lot, and he quit. He just quit 2 days, in about 2 weeks into it, just because he knew that it just wasn't, the money was going to be great, the people he worked with were good or whatever, but it did not line up with who he was. And I've always admired him for that, because I know a lot of people that have worked in that industry, and when someone's got to do it, and I'm not saying that that's a bad choice or whatever, and it might be the right choice for them, but for him, for that one moment, he was brave enough to make that choice. I think about that a lot.
That's interesting, because recently I bought a car,
I saw you pull up in it.
Yeah,
you look like a badass.
Yeah,
I was like, is that Joey?
It's a used car.
A Charger?
Yeah, a Challenger.
Challenger, yeah.
Yeah, and I've always kind of wanted one, because they're sporty, but yet they have a ride kind of like a big old Chrysler, what we used to call a lead sled. It's a really smooth ride.
Oh yeah.
And the kid that sold me this car, he was a nice kid.
Sure.
And when I got there and he told me it was worth it, and I offered him so much, he took it, And as a matter of fact, we started talking about fishing, and we're supposed to go fishing later on this spring. But
you and this kid?
What's that?
You and this kid?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And it's like another friend of mine bought a car from the same dealer, and I took him down there to pick up his car, and everybody came out and said, "Hey, Joey, how you doing?" They all knew me, and we both found it remarkable that these are car salesmen that it feels good to be there and talk to them. So I think there are people that are deviating from that. I heard one person say, well, first thing you got to realize about car salesmen is they're pathological liars.
Right.
But these guys, I just didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that way at all. And so I see evidence that there's people who want to transcend what's going on right now. The division in our country is just off the charts.
Is it anything like back in the 60s, back when they had the anti-war protests? And
I think there's definitely some parallels. Again, there's definitely some parallels. It's difficult to differentiate. Well, it's difficult to explain, because there's so many other things going on now.
Nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's so much going on, and so much in the media, and there's definitely some parallels. I can feel them,
but you would say the intensity nowadays it is greater, maybe due to the amount of things going on all at once, and then the access to.
It's challenging for me to give you an answer, because I'm so much different. I'm older. I've done some retrospective work on myself, and I think the one mantra that I've got like three kind of mantras, and one is that if I can live my life in such a way that my stability is not at the expense of anybody else, then I'm living a good life. I think Nietzsche or somebody had said something similar, and I liked that. It's like, my comfort should not be at the expense of someone else. The second one that I would say is that the last thing in the world we can afford to do is to oversimplify anything, because intersectional and relational phenomena are they're complicated, they're complex, and if you leave something out of the mix, which a cognitive framework has a tendency to do, it provides that consistency. It it doesn't mean that it's gone. You can leave it out of the mix if you want, but it's still there.
Yeah, right,
I mean, if the news can say, well, there's no tornado coming, but if there's one coming, it's coming. You know, I mean, so if the news, if you feel good about the news, then, you know, you need to feel good about the news that is complete and has not oversimplified.
Right.
Especially if it's in a dialectical war, like CNN and Fox, you know, or something like that. It's like, you know, you can watch one of those networks and you can predict what the other one's not going to say
100%.
or what they are going to say.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
so the last thing in the world we can do is, we can afford to do, is to oversimplify anything. And the other mantra was, my comfort should not be at the expense of somebody else's comfort. And I can't think what the third one was. I had a third one in mind. Maybe it'll come to me, but it's just, yeah. And when things are this complex, everyone's looking for consistency.
Right.
Relief. And
Some sort of structure, some sort of,
and maybe we should be looking at the chaos and grappling with it rather than trying to go around. You can't go under it, around it, over it. You must go through it. There's no other way.
Yeah. And if you don't go through it, you're pretty much just prolonging the inevitable.
Right.
Going through it. I mean, you have to.
Yeah, it's like you got to do the work. You got to do the work. I spent years in therapy with several different people. Yeah. And that's kind of shocking for me to admit for some people, but I don't think that's a shocking thing to do at all. I mean, I think, and my last therapist, she and I became really good friends, and she's passed on, but she said, well, you're willing to do the work. And I am. You know, and I hope that is an addiction that stays with me. Some of my other addictions, I'm glad they're gone.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, anytime I've ever done the work, as far as I can remember, it's always been a good outcome. Like, it's been worth it, or I've gained something that is very valuable to me, or I've jettisoned something off that was heavy or not needed. Yeah. Or, I won't say evil, but, just like bad. So it does, if you are willing to put the work in, more power to you. Right. Yeah. And, there are some things that I'm not going to ever be able to do. I'm not going to be a brain surgeon. I'm not going to, and I realize those things. But those things that there's a hunger for me to do down deep, and they require me to get off my ass and do them, If I don't do them, I'm going to be disappointed in myself. I mean, I do know that, I'm a tall person, and I have to deal with buying longer jeans. And stuff. I mean, that's just the way it is. But there's certain things that I'm not going to be able to do. Right. And I'll be okay with it. But those things that I think, those gifts that I have, if I don't use them, I'm going to be disappointed in myself. Yeah. And the temptation there, I think, is, I think this might happen with parents and kids and, just people. It's like those things that I failed to do, if I see somebody else doing them, then triggers. I don't like that. Triggers you, it triggers me. If I see somebody that is done the work on themselves that I was too chicken shit to do, I may be tempted to call them, they're oppressive, or oh, his dad had all the money. Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah. And it's like the rancor just gets tougher and tougher, but I do believe at the same time that that's happening, our conscience or that inner light, whatever you want to call it, is saying, do you realize what you're doing here, to yourself as you demonize that other person? You're not making things better for you. You're just making it worse. Yeah. And so then some people might tighten down and be even more, demonize the person even more. They might stop and say, yeah, maybe that person's somebody that I could learn from. 100%. Yeah, maybe. And rather than demonize them,
Ask them. And even if it's somebody that's done something horrible, can we learn from them? You know?
Like what not to do.
Yeah, or, you know, maybe they would reflect on it, you know.
You get, I would say you get inspiration both ways. You know, you see the person that did something similar to what you were called to do, and then one thing I would think of is, well, if they can do it, I can still do it. You know, they were successful in overcoming the darkness or the obstacle. I can do that too.
Right.
And then the other side of that, you know, you see someone that is much further down the path of what would you call it? Not arrogance. Well, arrogance, I guess, but much further down that path of closing in on themselves and, you know, demonizing other people. And it's like, whoa, I do not want to go down there. So yeah, I mean, you could learn from people that are like, that did the wrong thing.
Yeah, and it's what I referred to in my classes as a reflexive praxis. In other words, reflexivity is something you ask yourself continually. How did I come to know what I think I've come to know? Or how did I come to know what I think I know? Right. And second order change. I can't remember that we talked about this before, maybe. This is a story that I used in a lot of my classes. In the 70s, when the United States was pulling out of Vietnam, I was working in a restaurant in Florida. And it was one of those restaurants where snowbirds would come in and eat lobster and that kind of thing. And, in the kitchen where I was cooking, that's what I did. There was a television and radio, and we could see photo or films of the helicopters being pushed off into the China Sea, people on the top of the Saigon embassy wanting to get out, and we were losing a war that we had engaged in, and took, I think, between 50 and 60,000 American lives, and we were pulling out. And so there was a lot of rancor in the air. And this restaurant had a kind of a private section for the locals. And when I would get through cooking for a rush of customers, I would go out in that private section for the locals. And back then I smoked cigarettes, and I'd go have a cigarette and a coffee and look out in the window into the Florida night and stuff. And as I walked out of the kitchen, I walked by this guy's table, and he was a Marine officer, short hair, starched uniform, all that kind of stuff, and he's sitting by himself eating, and I accidentally bumped into his table, and it made his coffee slurp out of his cup, and I didn't even realize I'd done it, and I walked by, he goes, "Hey, you know, you," and I turned and I said, "Yes." He said, "Look at what you did. You spilled my coffee." He said, "Are you always this clumsy?" He was really mad, you know. And of course, I'm the counterculture hero with the long hair and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know what made me do this at the time, but I just looked at him, and I had to look at him in all sincerity and be careful of what my nonverbals said as I looked him in the eye, because I said, "You know what? You're right. That was clumsy of me." I said, "I apologize." I said, "Let me clean this up." And I went and got a towel and I cleaned up the coffee, gave him some coffee, and I said, "You know what? I work here." I said, "I'm going to take care of your bill, and I'm going to bring you some key lime pie, and I'll take care of that too." And I brought it to him, and his nonverbals have changed all of a sudden. He's like, "What's going on here?" And I brought him the stuff, and I said, "Once again, I apologize. You know, I've been working in the kitchen. It's hot, but that's not. I'm sorry." And I said, "Can I do anything else for you?" And he said, "No." So I went over to my table and sat down. And about 15 minutes later, he comes toward my table, and I'm thinking, "What's going to happen now?" And he came over to my table, totally different profile, totally different look on his face, totally different kinesiology, or, you know, his kinesics was shifted from like toxic intensity to just relatively calm look on his face. And he said, "Son, I owe you an apology." And I said, "No, not really." I said, "You were right, I was clumsy." He said, "No." He said, "I've got a son that looks just like you, and I don't know where he is." And I said, "Well, my father is a little bit like you, and he doesn't know where I am." And he said, "I wonder, could we visit for a while? Because I'd like to try to understand a little bit more about my son." And I said, "Sure." And he said, "Could I bring the wife in next week and we all sit down and talk?" And I said, "Yeah." And they did.
Wow.
But that's called second order change. It went from an order of animosity between two people that were situated on the opposite ends of the political spectrum, supposedly, you know, because of our costume, the way
I
we
have to
looked.
say, at least in look.
Yeah, and you know, and it shifted from that order into two human beings who were talking about what is actually happening, what's going on. It'd be nice if our political parties could do that now.
Yeah. But wouldn't you say that you broke the chain? Because I think it was based off your reaction.
Yeah, it was
that initiated the...
Well, there's one part about it, you know, I think that I've always been curious about, and I think that's what made me a pretty good teacher. And like I said, there are students who would say, "Oh, no, he was not, he was terrible." There's a lot that would say that, is that I've always been curious about why we volunteer more for toxic conflict than we do to try to actually get along with one another and actually talk about, you know, like one of my latest songs is, "Let's confess our sins to one another."
Yeah.
It was not Jesus that said that. I think it was James or something. There's a book in the Bible that said, "Confess your sins to one another." Don't talk about the other person's sins. Talk about your own. Right. And then that might attract them to talk about theirs. And then let's find out, you know, where we are from there. But I don't see that happening now. I mean, there are a few people involved in both parties that have turned on their own party and said, you know, we need to look at this, but most of them are not. Most of them are saying, "Oh, no, we're right and you're wrong."
Oh, 100%.
And it's just...
Especially right around voting time. You
know,
know,
it's just...
midterms or whatever.
Yeah, it's off the charts.
Yeah.
The toxic anger is just... bad news, man.
Yeah, and I was talking about this to you in the coffee shop, that the dynamics keep changing.
Yeah.
So first it was, you know, COVID and the shutdowns, and that took a while to process. And then it was the variants, and then the shutdowns got even more intense. And, you know, you lived through it, I lived through it. And now Russia just invaded the Ukraine, so that whole thing's going on. And we have this economic situation here.
The gas.
Gas is wild.
Yeah, I'm going to fill up when I'm over here before I go back to Pittsburg, because, and it's not a problem. I've got, you know, but there are some people who, they don't have those resources.
Yeah.
And I've got resources now from retirement, Social Security, all that kind of stuff. I hear that they're in jeopardy. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I just think about people that can't. I can work from home.
Yeah.
I don't have to get gas, you know. I could get gas rarely if I needed to.
Yeah.
But what about someone that has to commute every day, that has to be somewhere?
Well, and there's other things happening, like I can go to the grocery store in Pittsburg and there's nobody checking out the groceries. It's all a machine now.
Oh, yeah, right. All self-checkout.
And so some of those people are being replaced by machines.
Yeah.
In my own college where I taught, the university, they're not replacing the tenured people who leave. They're and I'm not demonizing them. I don't know who should be demonized on that, except I think that education is really important, and the quality of the educators is something that should be maintained. But again, the economics, you know, they designate what's going to happen, and you know, there's only so much money to go around, and so But I don't know. I was listening to something. I listen to a lot of talk radio, and talking about globally, there's a generation of children that are going to be inept at their awareness and their capacity to read because of the COVID thing.
Oh, yeah.
Online
the isolation.
Stuff. Yeah, the isolation. And so the repercussions of that are yet to be seen. But I think they're just around the corner.
Yeah.
I mean, people are being replaced by machines. People are not being replaced. And again, I don't know where that's headed.
Yeah.
Because I don't have any easy solution to that. It's not
Right.
like, and the people,
Bring them back, you know.
That goes back to that mantra of we can't afford to oversimplify, because if you think, well, this is the answer, they shouldn't do this, and this is the way it ought to be. We don't know that. Who knows that? You know, who could possibly know the complexities involved? And yet we've got people who claim to know, and in fact they pander to the very situation itself in order to get, you know, credibility.
Yeah. We need nuance in our conversations, in our debate. So many times I've, you know, I haven't sided with one side of the political spectrum or not. I've just commented a criticism of one side, and immediately I'm thrown to the other side.
Right, exactly.
Like, whoa, I didn't say that.
Right.
I didn't say that I was pro this or that. I just said this idea is, I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah. I delved a little bit in what we call the phenomenological tradition in communication. It's one of 7 traditions, but it's amazing how you can have a phenomenon appear, and you can get a variety of counts of what that is.
Yeah, right.
or how, you know, and each account, if you deconstruct the account that's given of that phenomena, you're going to see a different background, you're going to see a different religion, you're going to see possibly a different race, a different gender orientation, whatever. And so, again, we cannot afford to oversimplify anything. Even though it might feel good and we might feel stable for a little while, if we narrow it down into this framework that is manageable and feels good, it doesn't mean that the other stuff's gone.
Yeah.
It's still there.
Sure. Do you think it comes maybe a little bit from the obsession that we have with efficiency? We just want to be real efficient with everything.
Well,
like, I want to size you up that fast because I got shit to do, man. I got to go.
Well, I think it's driven by a kind of North American individualism. And functionality, you know, whatever that is, you know. And I think there's things that function, you know, but it's like, you know, we're going to, you know, I believe in something out there, some type of higher power, a he, she, it, whether I was raised Christian. I tell people I'm a recovering Baptist, you know, but I believe that there's something out there, and we're not it, you know. So a lot of people will say, well, North America was blessed by God much better than the rest of the world. I'm thinking, no. And I'm not ready to turn Jesus Christ into a Boy Scout. I'm sorry. I'm not ready to align Jesus Christ with the Stars and Stripes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Why
does that happen?
I don't know. I mean, there were no Stars and Stripes when Christ walked the earth, you know.
No.
But I mean, and to say, God bless America, well, yeah, for sure. The God that's out there, let's have it. But that God that's out there is not going to bless us in a better way than the other countries or the other nations.
Right.
And I see an ethnocentric obsession that permeates our country, thinking that, you know, we're the best.
All right. Well, talk about simplification.
Yeah.
My Lord.
Yeah, I think it's, and a lot of people are immediately, when they hear this, they're going to say, well, that unpatriotic asshole. You know? But actually, I'm being very patriotic to face the complexity and talk about it. Because if you leave anything out, you're setting yourself up for disaster. And I love my country, I love my nation, and I'd like to see it prosper and work, but there are no shortcuts.
Yeah, no doubt. That's why most people don't want to traverse down those roads because it is hard. It's
Yeah.
hard to talk to people, especially in a truthful way. I think that's why there's so much shallow, small talk.
Yeah.
How's the weather? Oh, nice car. And there's a place for that, I think. There's a place to talk. My wife was telling me about her new makeup or something the other day, and I'm like, in my mind, like, this is so stupid. But then, another part of me is like, no, this is important to her, and then it's interesting to her. And tell me about your makeup. There's a place for it. We don't have to be quoting Jung all the time.
Well, and it's like I just recently got married, and I'm not a diamond sort of person, or but we were in a jewelry store, and I said, "Would you like a ring?" And we were looking, and we were making fun of the cost, and then all of a sudden, she saw this ring, and I said, "Oh, she likes that.
Oh yeah,
I can tell she likes that a lot."
Yeah.
But that's what conservative people, they buy stuff like that, But she likes that. I bought it for her.
Nice.
And it's a diamond.
Yeah,
and
nice.
It doesn't necessarily go with the profile of two married people that live in separate houses and children of the 60s and all that stuff. I don't care. She liked it. I got it for her.
Right,
And somebody said, well, what's that all about? That, I don't know. She liked it.
Right.
I wanted her to have it because I saw the look in her eye when she saw the ring. And I thought, I love this woman, and if she loves that ring, I want her to have it.
Yep, that's awesome.
Now, if it would have jeopardized our food and nutrition and keeping ourselves warm, which it might eventually,
right?
Then I might have to,
with the diamond, right?
Then I might have to trade the diamond for.
Yeah.
I mean, my heat bill. I've had some atrocious heating bills.
Oh, I believe it.
I have a fireplace with an insert. I've burned more wood this winter than in the entire 10 years before I've had that house.
Does it work well, the fireplace?
Well, with the insert it does.
Yeah.
And I have a studio workshop that I built recently within the last year or so. And, I've had it 2 years now. It's got pipes. And so I had to, they were frozen one night. I had to turn on the heat out there.
Dang.
So I had to turn the heat off in the house. Except for the insert to counterbalance the bills, because I had a bill that was nearly $400.
Oh,
yeah,
that's gnarly.
Yeah, but that's good. I mean, everything's going up.
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, that makes me. I have a quote that I was kind of saving to share with you, but because you said that, that's the key word. I was watching this YouTube video of a guy who's a crypto analyst or whatever. Really like this guy. And he ended his video with this. It's the first panacea for a mismanaged nation is inflation of the currency. The second is war. Both bring a temporary prosperity. Both bring a permanent ruin. But both are the refuge of political and economic opportunists. Ernest Hemingway.
Wow. Well,
I know.
Well, he was quite the guy,
Yeah. Similar outcome to the other guy that you mentioned earlier about being isolated.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And wasn't he a writer? Or was he a musician?
Who were we talking about? An isolationist.
Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah, Paul Simon. Yeah, Paul Simon. Yeah, he had that song Richard Cory. I think it was on the same album. Both of them were songs about I am a rock, I'm an island, I have my books and my poetry to protect me. And, but, he ends up putting a bullet through his head. And I may have the two songs conflated, but that was the third mantra, I think, was, I'd said that we can't oversimplify, and my comfort should not be at the expense of someone else's comfort. Which, by the way, is difficult to tease out because there's so much projection of blame going on. You'd have to look at that, And then the other one is there are no shortcuts. It's just not.
Yeah. If you think it's a shortcut, it's not.
No. No, it just does not materialize. And,
Why do you think it's so difficult to pursue the truth of who you are?
Man, that's a good question. If you, while I'm thinking of an answer, you can look up that Hawthorne's
the
allegory of the human heart. that in a way, that the story of how I discovered that allegory of the human heart goes back to one of my English professors. My master's degree, I have a minor in American literature.
Do you remember meeting at Root?
Yeah, and we talked about Crane.
You spun me so hard.
Yeah.
I went to the truck feeling like I was going to throw up, and I recorded it on my phone. Thank God, because I mean, within 10 minutes, my brain's like overload.
Well,
and it was. I mean, I really appreciate you doing that. I mean, I really got a lot out of that.
Well, my period was naturalism and Stephen Crane, but also the romantics.
Yeah, Stephen Crane. You mentioned Melville. You're like, Moby Dick's an allegory for America.
Yeah, Moby Dick, and then of course Crane wrote the poem. And in fact, many anthologies introducing American literary naturalism will quote Crane's poem, "A man said of the universe, Sir, I exist. However, replied the universe, the fact has not created in me any sense of obligation."
Yeah.
You know, which means that we're just thrown out there into the chaotic world.
Right.
And one of Crane's short stories, the Blue Hotel, I think he says that we're like these little insects on this bulb floating through the universe. I mean, Crane's quite the guy. But
what was his Civil War book?
The Red Badge of Courage.
That's right.
Which when he wrote it, and Crane has underestimated the strength. When he wrote that, and he did not experience combat, but those veterans who did said he nailed it. You know, but Hawthorne's allegory of the human heart, the way that I discovered that, I took an English class. And we were studying Hawthorne, and the professor said, I want everybody to write a paper on the recurrent theme in Hawthorne's works, The Man with the Troubled Heart. So at the time, this was years ago, there was no computer. We went to the card catalog in the library. Some people don't even know what that is, and we all started looking for The Man with the Troubled Heart. You know?
Yeah.
Well, it was not there. We went back to class, there's no. He says, yeah, it's there. It's in the literature itself. You've got to find it. Oh, crap. So then we have to, the recurrent theme in all of Hawthorne's work. So we had to read a lot of Hawthorne. And in the process of reading a lot of Hawthorne, I found his American notebooks.
Okay.
And that's where the allegory. Did you find it?
I pulled up a couple of things. Oops.
Yeah, it's the allegory of the human heart.
Allegories of... And it's in his notebooks?
Yeah, it's in Hawthorne's notebooks. It says the human heart can be compared to a cavern.
The American notebooks?
Yeah, I think so. And if you go the allegory of the human heart, and I've used that allegory for my students or for people in a play where, and it should show, I've seen it.
So this almost looks like a paper written on it?
Probably.
Yeah.
If you just put an allegory of the human heart.
I got Hawthorne allegory human heart. I'll just do allegory human heart.
Yeah. That.
What? Yeah, I need that Hawthorne in there.
Yeah, you gotta have Hawthorne in there because.
Passages from the notebook. Did I already click?
Yeah, well, try that one.
Passages from Hawthorne's part 11 of the 12-part series, to sit at the gate of heaven and watch persons as they apply for admittance. Is that?
Yeah, it could be. But the allegory itself is just something that came right out of his notebooks.
Is it like a poem, like a link? Like
it's just a paragraph. It's a paragraph, and I've found it before by using Google, but Google so vast.
Yeah. Here, maybe PDF. Maybe I can get it straight on the PDF.
Could be, yeah.
I just downloaded something. Against symbolism. Young Goodman Brown, allegory against symbolism. I don't know. I'm not. Wonder if. There's a quote.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Not finding it.
I'd have to dig. Yeah, I'd have to do some digging to to actually locate it. I see people talking about it, or websites. Obviously, like right here, Allegories of the Heart is the actual book.
Yeah. Let me see what I've got here.
See, I wonder. I'll type Allegories of the Heart, Hawthorne. Yeah, it's right there.
It's amazing how we can use these devices. And
Yeah. Oh, maybe I got it. Maybe on Google Books. Usually you can get like.
Here it is. I found it. It says, the human heart, to be allegorized as a cavern. At the entrance there is sunshine and flowers growing about it. You step within but a short distance and begin to find yourself surrounded with a terrible gloom and monsters of diverse kinds. It seems like hell itself. You are bewildered and wander long without hope. At last a light strikes upon you. You pass toward it and find yourself in a region that seems in some sort to reproduce the flowers and sunny beauty of the entrance, but all perfect. These are the depths of the heart, or of human nature, bright and peaceful. The gloom and terror may lie deep, but deeper still, this eternal beauty.
Golly. That's just in his notebook.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
What an insight.
this passage is from
Okay, I brought that up. I did.
yeah. But that's, and I found that and went back to class and I got an A on the paper. He said, "Yeah, you nailed it." But it was, you had to read the works themselves, and and that's so typical of students. They want to fill in the blank.
Yeah.
I always told my students, if you're in my class and you have a fill in the blank mentality, you need to take another class.
Yeah.
Because that's not going to work here.
Will this be on the test?
Yeah, exactly.
I hated that question.
Yeah, and I say, this is more of an experiential thing, and so typical of all students. When he gave us that assignment, and we all went running off to find the answer, like he said it. And he said, "No, it's not. You have to find it, written within the context of his." But I did find that, and that was pretty close. But I was looking for it.
In the other works that you read, did it stand out to you?
Oh yeah,
The Troubled Heart. Was it in the characters, or was it just
young Goodman Brown?
Yeah.
The Scarlet Letter. I mean, all Hawthorne's. He was dealing with some heavy duty stuff. His ancestors were instrumental in putting some witches to death.
I read that before.
Yeah, and so. Hawthorne, he's got a dark side to him. But Hawthorne, Emerson, Thoreau, those three were the romantics that I, and William Blake, who was British.
Yeah.
William Blake was, some of his poetry suggested that he had taken psychedelic drugs or something. But,
probably did.
Yeah, he was the European side of that. But most of my stuff was naturalism, Crane, Jack London. A lot of people, they've read Call of the Wild and To Build a Fire. But one of Jack London's novels was Martin Eden, which is, check that one out sometime. And I always wanted to teach a class that compared London's Martin Eden with Kate Chopin's The Awakening, because they both deal with, in Martin Eden there's a male dealing with himself, and in Chopin a female and they're dealing with all the conventions that their culture and their family put upon them, and they're trying to grapple with that in the similar way that Nora in A Doll's House is grappling with, here's what Father told me I should be. Here's what the church told me I should be. Here's what culture told me I should be. I don't know who I am because I've spent all this time doing the should be's. I want to find out who I am.
Which could be some of the should be's.
Could be.
Could be.
And she could have stayed with, I mean, there's so much to be said about that with the relationship, because she could have stayed married to Torvald, and they both could have found out who they are. But he was too concerned with being the male in control, the breadwinner. You know, he had to be the patriarchal king on the mountain type thing, and she just said, I don't want a part of this. And she could have been. I loved the part where she said, here's your ring back. I don't want anything from you.
Yeah.
I mean, she wanted to go to the divorce court and celebrate, you know, destroying him.
Sure.
She said, I don't want to do that either. That's not part of me either. I don't know who I am.
Yeah.
I just want to go find out who I am.
It's interesting, though, that she made that choice, right? Because that's like that's her.
Right. And it's like...
So she's already doing that. She's already...
And Torvald even indicates, he says, well, what will people say? What will they think? And she says, I don't know.
Huh.
I don't
so
care.
it's another
Yeah,
clue to who she is.
Yeah,
you know,
it's like, I don't care. I just want to find out who I am. And so I think that, and of course we've mentioned Jung, we've mentioned Maslow. Another one that I read was Menninger. He had a clinic out in Topeka. You know, a lot of people don't know Menninger's book, Love Against Hate. The psychiatrist, psychoanalyst, the psychologist that I've been drawn to, and some of this is coming back, by the way, but I think it was before the talking cure, or before we lost the talking cure, and not before these were, you know, you go and talk to somebody, another human being. The talking cure was annihilated by pharmaceuticals.
Oh, right.
You know, oh, you're depressed, you're bipolar, well, take this. It will go in and rearrange the chemicals in your brain. And I'm not saying that that shouldn't happen, but don't get to know yourself, just numb yourself, you know. And here's a drug that will do that for you.
Yeah.
And by the way, we'll charge this much for it, and the price is liable to go up because the pharmaceutical companies were making
For profit.
billions off of this.
Yeah.
And it's similar to the passive stimulation of something like pornography. In other words, don't find a woman or a man or another man or whatever orientation you are that where you can get to know them and fulfill your sexual needs as well as your spiritual, emotional needs. Use this machine, and there you're safe.
Right.
You don't have to be vulnerable. But when you go through psychoanalysis before the pharmaceuticals killed the talking cure, then you have to be vulnerable. You have to admit your fears, talk about them.
Right.
When the analyst says, what's bothering you, you tell them.
Yeah.
Or you tell them, I'm not sure, but here's some clues. And
Right.
then you go into that journey Hawthorne's talking about, deep into yourself to find out, you know, who you are. And of course, you got to have an analyst that's ethical and got their act together as well.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to me. It's an adventure to me.
It's necessary.
Yeah.
I feel like it's necessary.
Yeah.
And the longer that people don't do it, I think the worse it gets, you know, the louder that it becomes.
Yeah.
And then you start to do kind of like I think it was a guy that was following you at the speed limit, you know.
Oh.
And now he's on your tail and gives you the finger as he blasts by. It's like...
Yeah, it's like I thought, I'm going the speed limit.
Yeah.
And as I get older, some of these narrow roads and stuff that have no shoulder, and I've got a car that's really pretty powerful. I don't, you know, it's like, I just want to keep it on the road.
Yeah.
And they're rushing to get someplace, and maybe they, in all fairness, maybe they need to. Maybe they got to pay some bills or whatever, but as he went by me, it wasn't enough to get by me. He had to tell me, hey, you're in my way.
Yeah.
You know?
Nobody, you're in your own way. You need to go down the path of the human heart.
I actually shared that with another friend, and he said, "You know what I do with those people is I slow down even more." And I think, well, there's another thing, you know. That you know, in other words, let's not. It's like that goes back to the coffee I spilled on the table. He says, "Hey, you." Well, what do you mean, "Hey, me"? Screw you. You know, it's like, no, we got to take it at another level.
Right. Are you familiar with the term transmutation?
I think I've heard of that.
Mostly I've heard it from sexual transmutation. So rather than, you're drawn to something, rather than go look at porn or whatever, you take that feeling, that urge, and you transmutate it into playing your guitar or calling a friend.
Yeah. I think that's I'm very much probably a neo-Freudian. I think Freud was onto some stuff, and so I think that the sexual energy we have can definitely be applied to other stuff. In fact, it's not a matter of does it happen. We can't keep from it. I mean, it's just, and so, and Freud himself, even though he's controversial, especially with some of the radical feminists, but there are some there's a school of thought in radical feminism that embraces Freud as well. A lot of people don't know about that, but I did a lot of research on that when I wrote my dissertation, and also I relied a lot on an Australian scholar, Robert Connell, who became Rowan Connell. Robert Connell was a man, but went through the transition and became a woman, and a leading gender scholar in Australia. Somebody that, a big fish in a big pond, and I emailed her and she emailed me back, and we had a brief conversation, but she's utilized some of Freud's insights. Yeah. And Freud himself, toward the end of his life, said, I've just opened a few doors. I don't know that I've walked through them, Wow. He just, he had some ideas. He provided us with a very subjective, it was non-empirically provable, the id, the ego, and superego, and the defense mechanisms, and the transferences, and all that's, not transferences, but I can't think now. I need my text, but anyways, a lot of the stuff he talked about rings true. I mean, and it's just a way to look at something. It's not a way to say, well, I'm right and you're wrong. Right. It's just another way to see it from a different angle. Right.
At the very least, it's teaching you to see it a way, and then you don't have to stay. You don't have to stay married to that sort of outlook. But if that's your first way to learn, that's how I feel about. I watch a lot of video essays on YouTube, and these people are they're talking about these different movies and what went right, what went wrong, why this character did this, or this plot line was shit. Yeah. And sometimes I think they go way too far. I think they're way too critical. But I just watch them because of the way they think, and it's teaching me how to dissect these certain types of media.
And compare and contrast that with your own thinking.
Exactly.
And it's not like I'm right and you're wrong. It's like it's just a being reflexive. How do I come to know what I've come to know? Well, it's behooving to me to look at what somebody else, how they did it, or at least how they're saying they did it, because what they're saying may or may not really represent what really happened. Right. And even in our own struggles or grappling with reality, I might tell you something happened this way, and I've left stuff out of the mix that needs to be in there. I mean,
sure.
And so that's the reason why I think Father Rohr says, I don't give you an answer, I'll give you a response. And that same question then 2 or 3 weeks later, or a month later, or a year later, he might have a totally different response, because he's had a lot of experience between the time the question was first answered or asked.
Just the word answer, it has such weight to it. Here's the answer.
Oh,
okay.
And that just again, there's no shortcuts. I was just recently exposed to Father Rohr. I've watched a couple of. I'm reading books, by him. I've got like several books going at the same time.
I listened to him on a podcast for the first several years ago. Art of Manliness podcast.
He works with men a lot.
And the description of the podcast didn't really excite me, but there was nothing else to listen to, so I listened, and I'm so glad I did, because he's
got a lot to say.
Very, very wise and very experienced guy.
Yeah.
Something about my own calling in life has to do with transformation, like periods of transformation, specifically, not completely, but specifically from child to adult, boy to man, and girl to woman. And so when he started talking about some of those, actually I have a book from him called From Wild Man to Wise Man. And it's about the transformation of the boyish energy and outlook of life, and then developing into the adult, the man. And Joseph Campbell talks about that a lot too.
Yep.
And how he actually used the example of a Major League Baseball player, and I think it was like an assistant professor that he was working with, and he was saying that the assistant professor had all these references to his paper.
Right.
It's like this Major League Baseball player doesn't look for any reference. He said he just speaks his mind, spits his chew, and walks off the field.
Yeah.
Because he has that authority.
Right.
He's not looking for that authority. He has it, and that represents the adult, or I guess the man energy, the masculine energy, or the feminine too, I guess. You would know more about that.
Well, I think that the gender conflicts are going on nowadays. I think quest for power and agency often get in the way of what we're trying to find. But that happens in academia as well. I mean, and not just with gender, with everything. It's like I actually had a professor in grad school tell our whole class, if you get a job someplace at a university, the teaching should be secondary. Your research should be first. And maybe that makes sense, but I don't think that was being said in a way that thought about the students. It was like your own agency. It's like promotion and tenure, and it's like the more publications you can get, the better.
Right. And publish or die. Right.
Yeah, and even the editorial boards for the journals that are accepting the work, they're all trying to survive too. And it's like, since I've talked to you last time, one of the most profoundly meaningful experiences I've had as a professor occurred last summer.
Wow.
They asked me to come back and teach a class just as a staff person. No faculty meetings, no desire, nothing about promotion, no public, just teach.
You're like, hell yeah.
And I thought, well, they didn't say that to me, but I realized that, they needed me, and I got to just teach. Just do what I do without looking over my shoulder, without, worrying about, well, I don't have a publication this semester. Yeah. I need to get promoted. I need I need agency, No. I just get to teach. And I told the students, I said, if you don't like this class, drop it, and I'm not trying to be an asshole or anything, but I'm going to just teach. And if you go to the authorities with something I did that you don't like, take it. I don't care. I don't really care.
Yeah.
And it, I didn't do that in a vengeful way, because I enjoyed the experience. I got into the teaching because I had one class, 12 students. I could give each one of them undue attention, read their essays, give them feedback.
Right.
It was an ideal situation, which should be happening with all professors, all student-professor relationships. These are people that are finding their voice. These are people that are developing their future, and they don't need a professor who's preoccupied with their own need to get promoted or to get tenure or to get published. Now, I'm not saying that the research shouldn't be done, because it should be, but what's the goal here? Is it agency or enlightenment? And if it's enlightenment, do the research, but get your students involved in the research.
Right.
Get that, and
doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other, right? Could be.
No, they can. They should complement one another.
Sure.
And completely, there should not be. Well, this is this part, and this. They should be interrelated. I can hear some people saying, well, that's awful simple. You're idealistic. I'm idealistic because I really want to enlighten students.
Yeah, right. I want to
teach.
teach.
What the hell does that mean? You
I
know?
want to teach.
Yeah. I mean, I'm here to provide what I know and what I don't know, and admit it. You know, that's. I'm here to try to be who I am, but as I involved in that quest, I can admit to the students, you know, I'm probably not doing it as well as I could, being who I am, because there's all this shit in the way, you know.
Yeah, right.
So it's like,
that's like people that have a skill, even as like an artist. I'm thinking of a buddy that's a barber, really good barber.
Yeah.
Terrible businessman.
yeah,
But it's because all that gets in the way. You know, he's got to do paperwork, and he's got to do
yeah.
insurance, and
Yeah.
he's got to do some promotion, and that holds him back a lot. And that's why I offered to help him. And you know, he now he's delegated it out,
Yeah.
so he can just cut hair.
right.
But there was so much of this extra bullshit that he had to deal with, to where it really affected him for a while. You know?
Yeah.
held him back.
It's like, yeah, that again, they need to complement one another. But I think that I want to say that I don't want to oversimplify anything either. There's a lot of stuff that probably should be improved, but I may not be fully aware of the challenges that people are facing. I'm trying to get to where I'm not confrontational. You know, I don't want to just confront. I want to be supportive and build up rather than tear down.
Right.
Just like we're doing right now globally with we're behind the Ukraine. At least it looks that way in the news. I hope that's true.
Yeah, me too.
You know, I hope that it's genuine, and that we're rallying behind them. And I'm a little bit concerned about Putin's rationality, and when he mentioned something about getting his finger on the nuclear button, that concerns me a lot.
Yeah.
I
That
think
make me feel real confident.
Yeah, I think we're all in the back of our mind thinking,
Excuse me? What'd you say?
Yeah.
What'd you say?
In the back of our mind, you know, you talk about it might not be so easy for us to be glib and calm about these matters with that, you know, I don't know. But if that happens, well, you know, we're done.
Right. We could be.
Yeah.
Could be a whole nother world, but it's once again, how many things have we gone through, and it continues to like increase in speed. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, you can go back to, I guess you go back to the start of human history, but you could pick whatever part of history you want to. You could start in the '60s, when you had all that revolution and the psychedelics and the anti-war and all that, and then you know you could connect it to the .com bubble of 2000, and then the financial crisis of 2008, and then there's 9/11 in there, and it seems like those sorts of world events are getting faster and faster, and getting more and more intense, because we're on the edge of nuclear war, I think, you know, from what I've seen.
Yeah.
I don't know how, like you said, I don't know how true it is. I don't know exactly where we are on this map.
I have metaphorical visions in my head of the boil finally popping open, and we start over again, you know.
Yeah.
But those of us that survive it, and who knows, maybe there's another level where we will survive it even though we're gone. It's like, I had a friend that I fished with. He was a colleague at the university, and he caught the COVID, and 3 weeks later he was gone. So it was like I had a very personal experience with that. Yeah, and that was before vaccines, before boosters, before anything.
Makes it a lot harder to deny.
Oh yeah,
if something like that happens.
I spoke at his funeral and everything. It was like I can still hear his voice, you know. We fished together and we talked and shared our ups and downs and all that stuff. And he's no longer here. But maybe he is. He's just in a different form. You know?
Right. Fifth dimension.
That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's something like that. You know, you start talking about quantum physics and string theories and 12th dimensions and stuff, and it's like, it goes back to, I'm just going to give you a response because I don't have an answer.
Right.
Here's my response of after death. Here's my response of whatever happens after we turn the lights out.
Yeah. That's. I guess when you get older and you start thinking in those terms, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Something that you would know about a person. So we take a person, take me. It's like, I'm a man. I identify as a man.
Yeah.
And I have masculine tendencies, but I also have a feminine side, right? Feminine energy. So like every person has the duality of the two genders.
I think so. Yeah.
So is there some sort of responsibility for an individual to develop each energy and somehow make them congruent, right? Because you don't want to be like all macho man.
I think
just a hard rock, that no emotions.
I think that's a you have a way of drawing some good stuff out of me. I think that when I was in high school, I played football. Mm-hmm. I liked it, but I can't stand watching it. And I don't know who plays for who. I don't care.
Yeah.
And I think that football at the college where I taught was an obsessive compulsive disorder. I think it's insanity.
Banging heads.
Well, I mean, just the preoccupation with football. I mean, it's just
not even the players. You mean
it's just everything's football. The Super Bowl. A $50,000 ticket for that. I think that's some form of insanity. But growing up in a small town, I was reluctant to admit to people at first that I'm bored watching sports, but because men are supposed to do that. Well, I'd rather be on stage or I'd rather read poetry. So eventually I got to where I admitted that. It wasn't in somebody's face, but or if they say, what do you think about those Packers and the quarterback? I'd say, I really don't follow that. Because a lot of times when you say that, it's like, oh, well, who are you?
Right.
So I was more interested in the feminine side of me, or things that could be aligned with feminine. It's interesting though, because as a gender communication scholar, I was a member of some feminist organizations, but it appeared to me at times when I would show up at those conferences that as a tall, straight, white male with a deep voice, all I had to do was stand there and breathe. And I just infuriated some of those people.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, except that they just were pissed off. And I think there's a lot of that rancor toward males, especially straight white males. I understand where it comes from, but I think some of it is misguided. Because I think that many of us are very sensitive. I mean, I'm more sensitive than my wife is with a lot of stuff, I lost a cat a few years ago, and man, I'm still not over it.
Yeah.
I loved that cat, She lost a cat too, and I thought, man, she got over that pretty quick,
Yeah.
But and maybe she just didn't express it as. I'm not trying to say that she's a non-feeling person, because she's very feeling, but I'm incredibly sensitive. I cry at Lassie movies and stuff. I guess anybody know what Lassie is, or I mean, I had an experience down in Texas one time. I was doing a show for Black History Month, and the administration said, "Can you put something together for the Juneteenth, which was Black History?" And so I went out into the community, and I got a bunch of black scholars and poets, and one of my students in my acting class, her mother was the director of the Baptist Church Choir. Well, I'll stereotype people from the South and black people. When they sing, they don't hold back. I mean, so she brought that choir in, and I had the choir in the background that would sing a cappella stuff in between the acts. It was a very nice way to integrate the whole thing. Well, when they first came to my theater, where I was chair of the theater there, director chair is not wrong. I mean, that's wrong. I was just director. It was a community college, and I worked myself to death there. But they started singing, and I had to leave.
Oh, wow.
And go. I was out in the lobby sobbing, and my student came up and said, "What's wrong with you, Pogue?" And I said, "I'm just." She said, "I knew that was going to happen because the feeling, the emotion, and those are feminine qualities. Now, why would I be compelled to leave? Well, because I'm not supposed to look like that. I'm a man, you know.
You're vulnerable.
Yeah, and I was just overtaken by their willingness to express themselves, and it was just beautiful.
You think that's because you were, I guess, put together? You're more aware.
Well, I think
yourself?
now, if that happened, that was back in '89, '90. I think if that happened now, I'd just stand there and let the tears come.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I see.
And we can all say, yeah, we're going to be more equal and we're going to, respect each one. I don't think that comes automatically.
Yeah.
I think you have to be mindful of that. I think because if you practice being a certain profile for many, many years, and your culture saying, well, this is what you're supposed to be, you're supposed to be, first of all, you're supposed to be aggressive sexually. You're supposed to be strong, no emotion, no sissy stuff. If that's pounded into your head for years and years and years, then, it has an effect on you.
Yeah.
Nobody is just totally free of that. I think that I have a theory. I don't know whether it's true or not, because I've shared it with a few people. I've shared it with some marginalized friends of mine, people that are marginalized, gay people, black people, they're slowly becoming less marginalized, but they're still marginalized. We have to keep that score, That's
Right.
But it's like I think if you are marginalized, and in a sense, I was marginalized by having those emotions. That's a pathway of seeing more clearly, because you don't realize it. It's the intersection of that. Another way to put it, I have one kidney because I had one removed. It had a growth on it, which was non-malignant. But when I first experienced the growth, about the size of a golf ball, right where the blood supply goes into the kidney.
Oh, wow.
And discovered it down in Texas when I was living down there, and I went to see Sammy Vick. He's a surgeon in San Antonio, and he was good. The reason I went to him because he had replaced Sean Elliott. Sean Elliott had a kidney transplant. He played for the Spurs, and he was able to play ball. And so you're the person I want.
Yeah, right. If you can do it for him, you can definitely do it for me.
Right, and so he said, I see it. It's there. He looked at the X-rays, and he said, I'll give you 3 scenarios. He said, first of all, it's just going to be a non-malignant cyst. We'll get it. You'll be fine because you can live on one kidney. The second scenario, it's going to be malignant but contained. So we'll still get it. Third, it's malignant and it's spread. He said, you're going to die.
Wow.
And it won't be long. So go home. We're going to operate in 3 weeks.
Wow.
So I had to think about that.
Wow.
For 3 weeks.
They wouldn't know until they cut out.
Right. They won't know. They have to send it off and test it and all that.
Yeah.
And so
biopsy.
I went home, and for some reason, I was okay. I was a bit anxious, but while that was happening, I remember there was a woman out in the country that took a vacation. I was not in that pain. I was very functional.
Yeah.
She said, "Will you feed my dog while I'm gone?" And I said, I went out there after this. I had this talk with the surgeon, and I started noticing just the trees and the grass and the stars, and I was noticing the mundane, the everyday stuff.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, wow.
The ordinary.
The ordinary. I think is it the quotidian? Is that the fancy word for it? I'm not sure whether.
Never heard that.
I think it's just the ordinary stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, I could not be a part of this. And I was becoming really aware, acutely aware, because the medical thing, I was all of a sudden a marginalized figure. I was not part of the mainstream. I was different, which all of us could be when I don't even know it. But and I became really aware and very appreciative of life and appreciative of other people and empathetic. And I mean, it was a gift. And then when I tell the story in a humorous sort of way, when they did the surgery and the test came back, said that, well, it's non-malignant, you're going to be fine. Within a few weeks, I turned into the same asshole I was before. You know, I was insensitive to you know, and I'm back on the bandwagon of I need this done. You know, it's not fair, and so I think that a little of that would help us with the gender thing. And being a male is, even if we are privileged, especially as a straight white men, doesn't mean that we're not grappling with some stuff.
Right.
But that stuff's not going to be recognized right now, probably, because you know, we've been in power too long, and we're paying for the sins of our fathers. You know, I don't know. That may be an oversimplification, but another thing I've realized that once I met my current wife, and we talk about everything.
Yeah.
And I trust her. And I didn't trust women before. I was frightened, you know.
Yeah.
If I was honest, I was frightened.
Yeah.
But you know, we talk about everything. We live in separate houses. We do separate stuff. I'm not worried that she's going to be untrue to me or something. And I was always worried before. Always. I was guilty of everything you're not supposed to be guilty of as a male. I was guilty. Now those things help me direct theater. They help me be sensitive to many times other men who could not talk about what they were feeling. You know, you're not supposed to display that. You don't disclose that. You know, but since I have established myself in this intimate relationship, my sexual needs are met. My relational needs are met. I'm not nearly as concerned about unfairness in the gender order. I mean, I know it's there, and I'd like to help, but it's not. It doesn't have me by the ass personally anymore.
Right.
But one thing that I realize is that she's so precious to me, and my relationship with her is so precious that I am vulnerable, because if I lost her, I'd be right back where I was before. I don't know whether I would be as insecure as I was before, but as a male, I've experienced insecurity, period. I mean, it's an awful thing to admit sometimes, but not really, not anymore.
Right.
The truth is the truth.
Yeah.
And to be a tall, straight white male with a deep voice and relatively good shape and all this stuff, and have these feminine feelings is kind of a contradiction, but I'm okay with it now. But I wasn't always at all, you know. And you just look at men who struggle with crying in public, or they have those compulsions or those impulses. I had them. I saw other people had them. They need to be talked about.
Yeah.
Openly.
I feel like the longer that I've lived and the more work that I've done, like we talked about earlier, the more work that I've put in, and the more truths that I've, you know, come to a myriad of choices. Which one could I go down? Which one could I pursue? Which one am I going to focus on, and really dig down deep and be like, I really want to focus on these. But I know it's this one. You know, the more I do that, the more that I feel like I've observed myself becoming more in tune with that kind of stuff. So certain pieces of art or poetry or human behavior, just you know, a husband just reaching for his wife's hand in public, you know, like, I notice
beautiful
that.
stuff.
Oh, but it affects me much more.
Yes,
for some
stuff.
reason, maybe I wasn't tuned in as much as I was now. I wasn't tuned in as much as I am now for whatever reason. I don't know if it's, I was just booting up slowly or whatever.
That's very, you really do have a way of putting things. That's great. Those inner subjectivities, if I can call it that, which a lot of people hear that word and say, what the hell's that? But those intersectional emotions, those need exploration, and because I think there's a lot of people being affected by that stuff and they don't even know it. They're not conscious of it.
Yeah.
And if they could establish freedom to be who they are rather than who they're supposed to be, I think that could help out a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, the tyranny of the ideals, the unobtainable ideals, that takes us hostage. And my own mother used to say, "You're too sensitive. You're too sensitive."
Really?
Oh my God, I'm
really?
too sensitive.
Wow.
Oh yeah, and in some ways, in a fundamental way, she was right. I mean, if you're going to explore, if you're going to survive in a patriarchal world as a straight white male, you can't afford to be too sensitive.
Sure.
But if you want another world, then bring on the sensitivity, because it'll help us form that other world.
Right. That goes back to what you said earlier as far as being the example yourself. If you're going to put the work in and you exhibit those behaviors, oh man, Dr. Pogue he's tearing up because of these people singing.
Right.
Then I might take notice of that and go, well, what is he hearing? And then maybe I tune in and go, oh, well, I think I know what he's hearing.
That's and doing it in such a way that you're not making a spectacle of yourselves, or you're not waving the flag. You're just being who you are.
Right.
Not in a way to look at how great I am, because mirror on the wall, who's the most empathetic, sensitive of us all type thing. It's not a battle like that.
Right.
But it does articulate itself in, if there's someone that's on the opposite end of the political spectrum or whatever spectrum it is, and you're available to actually interact with them honestly,
right.
and not try to be one up on them in a clever sort of way. I mean, this clever one-upmanship is it's tyrannical. It's like again, confess your sins to one another.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's so difficult to be the path maker of that, especially in a culture like we have today. Or I was trying to think of a chain breaker. Yeah. If you have to be the person to break, man, that is so hard. That's so difficult.
But if you do pull it off, it's important to realize that, I was just a channel for this. It's not. I'm not special.
Right. I think people can tell too. How you said if mirror on the wall, who's the most empathetic. I feel like I can tell pretty quickly. Like. When I've seen people be themselves, right. I don't know. It's just the wavelength of energy that they give out. I can tune into and be like, yeah, that really is. That's a true image of that person. Or it's like, this feels a little sketchy. This feels a little showman-y. Like I'm not sure what's going on here. There's something behind this.
It's an intuitive.
It really is. Yeah.
Something just not quite right here. Yeah, and. I will admit that some of my songs, like the one I just showed you a while ago, is I'm being a bit of a prick there. There's some of that. No, I got you back. And yet the message is we got to learn to love one another. Well, how do you say that in an empathetic way? It's challenging. It's very challenging. How do you market that? It's like, what makes something marketable? What makes an idea marketable? And once it becomes marketable, how do you keep it clean and authentic? That's the big one. I think it gets easier to do as you get older, because you realize this whole game is kind of absurd.
Right, it really is.
It's like. And that's something that John Prine had a song You know, we lost John Prine there. We lost somebody really beautiful there, John Prine. But he had the song "Hello" in there about old people, and old people, they've got some wisdom.
Oh, for sure.
Our culture does not. Father Rohr was talking about, you know, we're the only nation in the world where teenagers are the ultimate ideal because they're young and they,
Well, that shows where our cultural values lie,
I know,
right? Yeah.
I know, yeah. Marking it to the teenagers and
youngest, you know, under 30 billionaire. You know, that's
Yeah.
what they market. Or this 21-year-old started a tech company or whatever.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
what the hell is this kid? Hey, he knows how to code. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
That was one of the more profound lessons or epiphanies or understandings from when I took psychedelics was the isolation of age with people. And, you know, just thinking about the older people in my life and how they don't know technology like I do.
Yeah.
And how it's so easy for me to whip my phone out and send a text message to my grandma. She might not get a text all day.
Right,
She might not get a text all week.
Yeah.
I get hundreds a day. So I just remember feeling the weight of that, of being like, well, when I get older, I don't want people to forget me.
Right.
I want people to, you know, want to spend time with me or ask me questions, and I want to be a part of everyone's life. So I do remember that being pretty heavy.
Yeah, I remember when answering machines first became a thing, and I got an answering machine, and my grandparents were alive, and they called and you know, they got the answering machine, and I heard them, and they said, "What do we do?" And my grandmother's name was Bertha, and my grandfather was Terrell. Terrell, what do we say? You know, and they didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine what they would do now with texts and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah, right.
they were just they wanted to work into the mix, you know, but
Right.
all they had known was a phone at home and a television where you had to get up off your feet to change the channels, and now it's like it just multiplies in complexity. It's just a runaway train. The cat's out of the bag. We're not going to put it back in.
Runaway train is a perfect metaphor.
Yeah.
And I'm so deep into tech, and so I have pity on people. I'm like, don't worry that you don't know how to do Amazon Fire Stick.
Yeah.
Like, don't listen to people that say it's simple, because it's not.
Well,
the application is simple, but
the guy that's working with me, I'm going to see him after I complete this. We're recording the tracks to this song, and it's like we're using a click track, and I don't keep time that well. I mean, I'm a performer, and I can perform with a band sometimes, but I get off with the machines. You can't. You have to follow that machine. Well, there's all these bells and whistles, and you can do the Frankenstein thing where you make a track, you know. And he's loaned me he's got another machine, and I've got it at the house, and I've started to try to use it. I just want to turn the damn thing on. Well, no, it's not that.
Right.
You know, there's
Open
so
system.
many bells and whistles.
yeah.
And a friend of mine that I taught with up in northern Missouri when I first started teaching community college, I went from high school to community college. He was in charge of, at that time, and that was in the 80s, he was in charge of the programming the computers on campus, and he was the person they went to. And nowadays, he just looks at me and he says, don't feel bad about he said, nobody understands all of it.
No.
And that's, to me, that's a problem, because we don't understand ourselves. We don't understand how we relate. I take that back. I think on a level, the Hawthorne's level of the inner light, we do understand. That's another conversation we can have sometime. I think that it's not a matter of we don't understand. It's a matter of we can't keep from understanding. In other words, there is a conscience there, and it summons our attention. We just don't want to hear it.
Right. That's where the addictions come from.
Yeah,
and the distractions, right?
Right. Yeah. It's like that's where conflict becomes a strategy.
Right.
So as long as I get wrapped up in this conflict, especially if it's one that paints me as patriotic or as then I can use that to avoid hearing what is being said.
Yeah.
And so that human side is something that needs to be explored. We need to explore what we already know, but the digital stuff, which gets in the way of that exploration, is getting so complex that as we try to use it, I think we're getting further and further away from who we are. And that probably didn't make a whole lot of sense, but
I thought it did.
yeah, I mean, it's like it's getting so enormously complex, and it's part of our lives. Like, if I lost my cell phone right now, I'd be up shit creek.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to check my bank account.
Just ask yourself, how comfortable would you be?
And I've become overly dependent on it.
I would be so uncomfortable. Like, I would not be able to have a conversation. I'd be thinking, like, how am I going to get this? How am I going to get back and connected with my phone?
Yeah. It's like I said, my wife and I live in separate houses. Well, if one of us leaves the house and leaves our cell phone there, so I'm going to call her and tell, I can't call her, it's there.
Yeah.
And so I like shirts. I started wearing shirts with pockets so that I can have my cell phone right there.
Yeah.
And as an actor, learning my lines, it's perfect, Even the demos of my songs that you heard, that was just on the phone.
Powerful tools.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But it's like having a pet tiger or something.
Yeah,
really cool. But you got to keep that thing in check.
Oh, you do,
because it will pounce on you.
It'll bite your ass.
It will bite you, and it will not let go.
I know.
There's times where I'm like, how long have I been here?
Yeah.
How long have I been sucked into this thing? I'm late for whatever.
Yeah.
The point that you made about, I think you said something like, we can't not pursue the truth,
right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
That goes back to my question that we were kind of trying to figure out. I was like, why is it so scary, or why is it so difficult, or so difficult to, like, what are we afraid of our true selves? Like, why do we distract ourselves rather than just be like, that's who I am, and just boom, go straight to it? We just take every path that doesn't lead there, and
it's a good question.
It doesn't make sense to me, because I mean, I do it, and I'm assuming everyone else does.
Oh, sure, yeah. It's a really good question, and
we're afraid of it.
I think that's what, again, artistic expression is all about.
Do you think that the artistic expression, almost for the artist, that's creating the expression, it's almost a defense mechanism to develop an image or a song or a story that they can explore that rather than them having to go through the experience?
I think maybe there's a little bit of both there.
Yeah.
I think it was Mick Jagger that said he kept a notebook next to the bed so that if something hit him in the night stream of consciousness, he'd write it down real quick before it's lost. I think there's stuff that we want to say that's already there, but when we become aware, it recedes to the background. And whenever you do, I mean, I'm speaking as an artist here, as well as a teacher, as well as a carpenter even. It's like, if I'm remodeling a house, and there's been termite damage, and it's deep down into the plate of that house where I've got to tear all the siding off and go through just a mess, when the shortcut's available, I could just put siding over that and we'll forget it. It won't show up for. I don't feel good about that, But if I go down to the core, to the best of my ability, and I know I've done everything that can possibly be done by me to remedy that situation, I feel complete. I feel good. I can sleep at night. I can look my wife in the eye. I can look myself in the eye. But if I take a shortcut, and we're living in a world right now where impulsive shortcuts are marketed to us constantly. You know, I think Rohr talks about that. The instantaneous gratification that's minus of any contemplation at all. Yeah. And so if I write a song, and the best songs that I have, if I have any that are good, are I usually just come right out.
Yeah.
And that's not always true.
Sure.
And you know, as a director of theater, and I wish I could capitalize on this. I haven't directed in a while. I don't even know whether I'll ever direct again. And sometimes when I do direct, because I do want to go deep into the heart of that house and get all the people are like, I'm not going to be in a show with him. That's too much, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, but for
go
some
Pogue or go home.
Yeah. For some reason, I don't have to discipline myself. I just do it. I mean, it's like I'm just true to it, and it's a beautiful experience because it's an ensemble, and you know, there's designers, there's people that deal with the music, color, scenery, stage management, lighting, all of that stuff. And if it's not, if we don't all give to it, there'll be something missing. And I always like, I get on the stage with my students and sweep the floor. I do the dirty work, you know, as well, you know, the menial. I mean, it's all, I'm in love with it. And sometimes I'll spend too many hours and make myself sick, you know. I wish I had the same discipline when it comes to songwriting or even acting. I mean, I enjoy the acting, but I sometimes have to push myself, you know. But with the directing, it doesn't matter what's happening. I mean, I've directed when things were really going to shit in my life, and I just did it. You know?
Yeah, right.
I showed up. It was a natural compulsion, you know, which I capitalized on. I think maybe it has to do with the fact that I know it will never be complete. The show could always be better. We could always get closer to the human condition that show's talking about. But with other things, you know, I'm not as devoted naturally.
Yeah. Not necessarily a bad thing, right?
No. Yeah. The last song that I've been working on here, it sort of, the song took me. So I'd go into I've got a room at my house, kind of an office area where my guitars are and all my writing and stuff, and I'd go in there at noon and I'd say, well, I'm just going to, you know, mess with this a little bit, and I'd be finished to be 5:30. Wow. You know. Right.
Almost flow state like. You know.
Yeah, and so that feels good. That's it's painful, but it feels good. It delineates the difference between happiness and joy. Bob Dylan said once, I don't know where I saw it, I think it was in Rolling Stone or something, he said, I've got more important things to do than to be happy.
Wow.
Because joy, sometimes it was painful to get there. But you feel, you know, I remodeled the house, I smashed my finger, I lost some tools, but it's done. I can see it. Yeah. I feel joy. Right. Happiness, I'm not saying I don't want to be happy. Right. But so what? You know, I'm happy.
But not like you probably don't want to be perpetually happy.
No,
you know? It's kind of that's almost a form of insanity. Or something.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That struggle is it's kind of like anything hard in my life. Like I don't know, camping's one that definitely will remind you of all the benefits and the good things that you have in your life.
Oh yeah,
because it's not very easy, and a lot of times it's not very that comfortable. And so you're out there roughing it, and by the time you get back to the house, you're like, oh my gosh. air conditioned. Wow, this is really nice, you know. So it kind of speaks onto the whole balance. Like I think of the yin yang symbol almost, you know. You got to have the darkness for the light. You have to have that reflection of each one to understand the other.
I was fortunate enough to go to Peru with PSU med students.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And when we left, well, we were in Peru for 2 weeks, and we hiked. We went up a mountain one day in a van. Took us a couple hours, and then they put us out, and we hiked up 6 more hours to this. We were at 16,000 feet.
Wow.
In the mountains.
Wow.
And you know, we roughed it. And then when we were not in the mountains, setting up these triages for medical supplies and for the Indians and the natives there in the mountains, you know, we stayed at this kind of like hostel place, and we used the same towel for like 2 weeks, and it was just, you know, we took tepid showers, sometimes cold in the morning. You could see your breath, and we got back to flew into Houston after that 2 weeks. Went to Lima after that, and that was a fascinating city, you know. But we got back to Houston, and sitting on the plane with me to the right was an American kid that he was in the Peace Corps, and he had been down there for 3 or 4 years.
Oh, wow.
The rest of us had just been there for 2 weeks. Everybody was, I'm going to go to Starbucks, I'm going to take a hot shower.
Right.
You know, I took a hot shower for like an hour, you know,
right.
and Starbucks and McDonald's, you know, and they were all excited when we landed. And I turned and looked at that kid's face, and he was just like, He was looking out there, and I wanted to know what he was thinking, because I think he was thinking differently. He'd been down there for a long time. He had become a part of the culture, and he was back, and here we are coasting down the runway in Houston, and he sees America out there, the lights, the Starbucks, and he was not real anxious to get back into it. I didn't talk to him much.
Yeah. But you could sense that from him.
I just sensed it. I studied his face, you know, and studied his kinesics, and he was just very. The rest of us like, hey, we're here back in the USA, and he was like, we're back in the USA.
Right. What does this mean?
Yeah. What does it mean?
Who am I going to be? Who am I going to be now? Now that I've been 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
That would be.
Well, I got a piece of what he may have been thinking. Because the NGOs would bring us out lunches in the day, and one day they brought out box lunches of peanut butter and jelly sandwich and potato chips and I think a piece of fruit or something in this box.
Right.
And we're up at 16,000 feet in the mountains, and where it was spitting snow one morning, and we got kids wearing sandals made out of tires, you know, and but they handed me that, and I took that peanut butter sandwich out and I started eating it, and I had like 6 kids sitting in a circle just watching me eat that sandwich as if it were gold or diamonds, and they were just looking at me just with this hunger in their eyes and their faces, and I thought, wow. And they, in the mountains in Peru, they live on a particular type of potato, and they spice it really well, and they build a fire, and then they put it in the ground beneath the fire somehow.
That's how they cook it?
Yeah. And sometimes that's all they eat. And one day we saw a family with oxen and like a prehistoric plow. And the husband was behind the plow, and the mother was out in front of the oxen leading them, and then there were 2 little kids sitting over here, and there was this mound with smoke, and that's where the potatoes were cooking. And but I just remember seeing that, and I thought, man, you know, the way the pie has been divided up on the planet, something not right here.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, something's not right. I mean, we've got all this abundance in America, and it was good to get back. It was good to get coffee. It was good to have a hot shower.
Yeah.
We didn't have it down there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like when people demonize that kind of stuff because it's like I like it.
Yeah,
But the
I do
worship
too.
of it, you know, maybe that's where the criticism would come from.
Or the my meditation every morning is that I'm grateful for what I have, and that I recognize. It's just being able to see, to walk, to talk, and you know, if we couldn't do this right now, if all of a sudden I couldn't talk or I couldn't see, I couldn't hear, it'd be horrible. But we don't recognize that unless it's in retrospect. That's I go back to the situation when I had my kidney, and I was like, do I have cancer? Am I going to live?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm mindful of everything.
You're awake.
Yeah.
It makes me think of Fight Club.
Yeah.
You familiar with the movie?
Uh-huh.
When Raymond, the gas station clerk, gets taken out back, and he puts a gun to the back of his head and reads his ID.
Yeah.
And he sees his college card. He goes, taking classes? He's like, no, too hard. He's like, why'd you stop, you know? And then he's like, well, I'm going to come back in 2 weeks, and if you're not on your way to being a veterinarian, I'll kill you. And that's Tyler Durden, you know, arguably the shadow.
Yeah.
And he runs off, and he's like, the narrator's like, what did you do that for? And he goes, tomorrow morning will be the best day of Raymond Kessel's life. His breakfast will taste better than any breakfast we've ever had. Yeah. And he'll have you know, and obviously that's a pretty drastic, like, you don't want to do that.
That's a heavy movie.
Oh, man. And talk about gender roles and masculinity and what a culture, you know, one of the best lines is they're on that bus, and they have that Calvin Klein advertisement. It's got six-pack abs and everything. He goes, that what a man look like? I mean, dude, that movie is amazing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I saw another movie that's really heavy into gender and stuff. I just finished it last night. It's the second time I've seen it. Pieces of a Woman. Have you seen that? Watch it.
Is it a newer?
Pieces of a Woman. No, it's been around for a while. It's on Netflix right now. It's
Shia LaBeouf?
The lead character there on the left. What's her name?
Vanessa Kirby.
Oh yeah,
Martha Weiss.
She's and Ellen Bernstein. It's heavy.
This one? Does it look great?
Yeah. And what it shows, and this is something that I could share too, is like I don't have any children that I know of, and I think I missed out on something that really profoundly meaningful. And whenever I see the scene that you'll see in that movie and you watch it of someone giving birth and the pain of the woman, I'm envious. I wish that you know, I could be a part of something like that. But it's not going to happen, you know. But
was that a conscious decision?
Not necessarily. No. You know, I've had this fantasy that when I was teaching, I would be sitting in my office one day, and some co-ed male or female would walk in, a nice-looking person, and sit down, and they'd make straight A's, and they would be beautiful, and they'd say, "Guess who I am? I'm your child," you know. And I'd say, "Oh." And oh, great! And then we'd have this relationship.
Yeah, right.
But no, and my wife's got 2 boys. That's not the way it works. You know?
Yeah, right.
But you know, I know I've missed out on something really profoundly meaningful by not having children. And whenever I see the scenes of a birth, it tears me up. You know, it's like I can weep. You know, and there's a part of me that's envious of women. You know, the power to have a child, and I've never thought women were weak at all. I mean, I don't see it that way. I mean, if anything, you know, we are the weak ones, the males. You know, in many ways. You know, we can be the chicken shits, you know.
Right.
And
it's like when you measure everything by how much you bench, you know, like, yeah, of course everyone's weak.
Yeah,
in a simplified sort of measurement like that. You know?
Have you seen that? There's really a neat commercial. I think there's commercials now for getting online help psychologically. You know? Okay. And there's this one. This guy's in the gym and he's working out, and he looks over and there's a guy with the barbell, and he's trapped. You know.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And he goes over and says, "You need some help?" He said, "It's not a shame to ask for help." Said, "You don't understand my family."
That's actually really good.
Yeah. If you see that one, it's funny as could be. I laughed my head off because he's going, "No, you can't help me because my family would not, you know."
Right. You don't know my past.
I'm a man, and you don't understand my family.
Right.
But so there are some good things happening. You know, I guess maybe we could sum up with that. You know, that there are some people are good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a student of Marianne Williamson. I like some of her stuff. You know, she is. She's a Course of Miracles scholar. She's kind of a guru when it comes to
Williams or Williamson.
Marianne Williamson.
Yeah. This one.
And she has a meditation every day, and there you go. Nice. I've studied her for years.
Okay.
And she was actually a Democratic candidate in the last.
Really?
She dropped out. But,
okay.
Because the world is not
candidate.
Yeah, the world is not ready for Marianne's stuff yet, but yet we need to be. I forgot where I was going with that after I saw but she's like puts you in touch with stuff.
You're talking about just people are inherently good.
Oh yeah. It's a matter of. And it's where I kind of got this idea, but I already had it. It's like, it's not a matter of you can't find yourself. It's a matter of the fact that you can't keep from finding yourself.
Right.
And it's that voice that we don't want to listen to, because it's there. Mm-hmm. Which
you can't keep from finding yourself.
Yeah, and so it kind of. I think in these terms, and a lot of fundamentalist Christians would have problems with this. And I definitely was raised as a fundamentalist Christian, and I'm not ready to throw all that out the window.
Sure.
But it's not a matter of not being able to find yourself. It's a matter of it's impossible not to find yourself, because it's there. The convictions are there. It's just a matter of will you listen to them or not. And that translates. And I don't know whether I'm ready to say this with finality or not, but if we're created in God's image, we're kind of like gods. And so therefore, we have natural convictions that we can't get rid of. So therefore, when I do something that hurts somebody else, I don't feel good. That's not an appealing feeling.
Right.
If my security depends on the putting down of someone else or the being above them, that doesn't feel good. So if I'm truly selfish, I'm not going to hurt somebody else because I want to protect myself. And when I do something that hurts you or somebody else, my self hurts.
Right.
And that's a problem with a lot of people. They would not go for that.
What do you do with that? What do you do with you can't help but to find yourself?
Accept it.
Yeah.
Explore it.
Yeah.
When it shows up, don't run from it. Don't take a pill to numb yourself out, to not feel it. Don't distract yourself from that voice that's speaking. It's the Holy Spirit. It's there. Your convictions are there. It's not a matter of if they're there or not. It's how can they keep from not. It's impossible for them not to be there. Now, that's just some ideas I'm flirting with as I grapple with my Baptist upbringing. Because to get away from this idea of I'm going to be punished and all that kind of stuff because I'm bad. Right.
Yeah. That's like what you were talking about teaching earlier. Like that's the extra. I see that as the extra stuff, the stuff that's like in the way.
Yeah.
It's like we get rid of all this fear-based stuff,
right,
and actually get down to the
To love.
Yeah, I was not. Yeah, to the love part, to the actual essence of the religion or the pursuit of this truth, then we could really do it.
Right.
But we're
right.
dealing with all this other stuff.
And people who embrace their insecurity, which I'm trying to do, it turns, the more truthful I am about my insecurity, the more secure I become.
The more truthful that you are about your insecurity, the more secure you become.
Right. Because I don't have to manage the lie. I don't have to manage.
Right.
I don't have to watch my back. I don't have to qualify. I don't have to say, well, and somebody will say, well, you're insecure. I said, yeah.
Right.
Probably so.
Yeah, right. You got me.
And when it comes to the cultural mandates, the rules and regulations of this culture, yeah, I'm pretty insecure because you're putting forth some ideals that there's no way I can live up to those things. So am I insecure about that? Yep.
See, and then when you do that, or when people do that, that's like a shot. That's like a flash of truth to that person, and so now they can't escape it. So that now they have to observe themselves.
Well, it goes back to the guy that I spilled his coffee. He said, hey, you messed up. And I said,
I did.
I did. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, exactly.
And he goes, what? You don't want to fight with me?
Yeah,
Come
right.
on, man. I need to fight with you.
Exactly.
If I can fight with you, then I can continue fighting with my son. And I don't want to try to understand him because then I'd have to understand myself. But
exactly.
when I said, you're right, and he said, I am. It's kind of like, son, I owe you an apology.
Yep.
You remind me of my son. And I said, well, you remind me of my father. He said, can we talk? And I think that's what we need to maybe say in our culture right now. Can we talk? Can the Democrats and Republicans sit down and talk? Seems simple enough, but it's not happening, is it?
No.
Yeah.
But you think part of it's probably the isolation, stay in your house. So then the only way of communication that we have is through a text or a phone call or a Zoom.
Well, I think that, again, none of us can survive as individuals. Our individuality is only recognized within the context of relationships, because otherwise, how would you see it?
Right.
It's like black cannot be recognized unless it's juxtaposed next to white.
Right.
And some of us are wanting to be all white or all black. Well, no, I'm sorry. I'm not a scientist when it comes to this, but we're relational beings, and fish spawn and they have eggs, and the fish swim away. They're on their own.
Right.
We're not.
No.
We spit it out of the womb, and then all of a sudden it's like we're totally helpless. So we are inevitably dependent on relationships that tell us who to be and what to aspire to and all of that, and yet at the same time we honor and value the individual that did it their way.
Yeah, right.
What does that mean?
The myth, right?
Yeah. It doesn't, it's like Sinatra's song, I Did It My Way.
Right, yeah. Was that Elvis?
Sinatra.
Yeah. I did it my way.
Yeah, the one of my father's favorite songs,
Yeah, there's definitely something appealing about that myth, about the self-made. It's kind of, I guess, now that I'm thinking about it, it's kind of wrapped up in a hero mentality,
Very much so.
Achilles shows up and does it. He does it on his own, He fights this war, or Hercules, or pick your who's the Gilgamesh,
Yeah.
Any of those heroes, they did it themselves, and that's, as a man, that's like a state of being that you definitely you want to obtain somehow.
And we turn those people into figures that we all follow, and we prop them up, and as they prop themselves up with, I don't know, I find the examples of Christ in the Bible to be very compelling, and these are my readings of this. There would be some theologians that would say that I'm way off the beam here, but I'm always struck by that relationship that Christ had with, who was it, the leader?
One of the apostles?
No, the guy that said...
Pilate?
Pilate. Yeah. Christ and Pilate. Pilate says, are you the king of the Jews? You say you're the king of the Jews? Christ says, well, that's what they're saying, you know. And he says, well, prove it. What does Christ do? Nothing. He just looks him in the eye. And Pilate says, ooh.
He shook him.
Yeah, I'm nervous about this, you know. And so I'm so nervous that, you know, I wash my hands of this. Is whatever you do, what you guys do, what you want with this guy, because I don't know what to do with him. And so they're going to turn a murderer loose and kill this guy because, you know, he shows up and walks into the temple one day and says, you know, this isn't quite right what you all are doing. And it'd be like walking into a panel of tenured professors and they're saying, you're not teaching the right stuff. Oh, who do you think? How many publications do you have? You know, you know, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. It's my take on. I'm studying it a lot. I'm still studying this kind of thing, and it seems to me like that Christ shows up in the form of, and the Roar talks about this, the intersection of the divine and the human, and. He looks around at all these people that are angry and wanting to kill each other, and he says, you know what? Kill me. Don't kill each other. Kill me. Now, that's just an oversimplification. That's the idea. I mean, there's a kind of a generative principle there I'm working with. I'm thinking, what's going on there?
It makes me think of my favorite movie telling of Christ, which is Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ.
Was that
William Dafoe?
Yeah, I need to see that.
I think it encapsulates Christ's story the most human I've ever seen. You know, most of the time he's kind of a divine figure who's like, I got it figured out. Yeah. There's no danger here. I'm not nervous. William Dafoe is nervous. Like, he's a human man, and he has insecurities and he has fears, and he's not quite sure if he's supposed to lead this group of apostles, but he does have that, you know, as the story goes on, he does have that buildup of confidence, and he's healing people. So there is that balance, but I just think they captured it so well. And there's this weird thing at the end where they do this time dilation. I won't ruin it for you, but man, there's a weird, I don't know.
I'll have to look at that.
Very cool cinematic piece at the very end.
Yeah, I've heard that it's pretty good. And,
yeah.
I always liked, and this gets back into the gender order, but I always liked Ellen Reddy's take on Jesus Christ Superstar, the song, I Don't Know How to Love Him.
That's one of the lyrics?
Yeah. This is, I've had so many men before in oh so many ways. He scares me so. And so, you know, Eric Fromm's got another book called The Art of Loving, where he attacks the whole idea of technique in making love. Okay. And we'll see that now, and you'll see it in the world today, you know. Yeah. Men, Viagra commercials. You're going to get bigger, harder. You're going to, you know.
It's all about performance.
It's about performance, technique.
Sounds like a car or something, you know.
Yeah,
it's
technique. You know, you got the technique down, and Playboy magazine talked about it. I wrote my dissertation on the Playboy magazine, or Playboy Advisor.
Oh, I'd like to read that.
Yeah, it's available. So it's the Playboy Advisor, and I studied the Playboy Advisor letters from when they first started up to 2002. I had between 5,000 and 7,000 letters written to the Playboy Advisor, and I took every 10th letter by mail. And broke it down and deconstructed what men were preoccupied with.
These are letters asking questions?
Asking questions.
Okay.
And the whole Advisor started out, in fact, I even emailed the Advisor and I got a response. It started out as a kind of a spoof on Dear Abby. They were making fun of Dear Abby. And so they had a magazine come out, you know, with Dear Abby. Well, they got all these questions from men who could remain anonymous and get, you know, So they got some psychologists and people involved, sociologists, to answer these questions. Now, were the letters selected in order to prop up their agenda? Probably, but still, it's my committee and the PA said this is still relevant because it's media, it's pop culture, it's speaking to, and it's helping men construct who they are, whether they're real letters or not. But and I broke down the themes, and strangely enough, the sexual technique was not the predominant theme. It was a predominant, but the top theme was relational maintenance. You know, how do I have a relationship? And then the sexual technique. But within the context of sexual technique was, I don't care whether I get off, but she's got to get off. In other words, the male, if she doesn't get off, then I've failed.
Yep.
Yeah, and I feel insecure.
Yeah.
You know? But if she gets off, if I'm one letter called it, or the Playboy Advisor answered, when a woman tells you what it is to get her off, then she's given you the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah.
And so men are preoccupied. They're insecure about their real performance, who they really are, and it articulates itself in a very intense way with their sexuality. And so Fromm wrote that book in the 60s. I think that was probably misinterpreted because he said the art of loving has nothing to do with sexual technique, or at least not in the sense of, we'll just do, if I'm good in bed, then everything's going to be fine. He said, no, that's not it.
Yeah.
But if you look at the porn nowadays,
right,
the money shot, all that kind of stuff, it's like getting her off, and if you don't get that, then you're vulnerable to losing her to somebody else. And so now a lot of people don't want to talk about that. They refuse to talk about that, and they say that I'm crazy. Well, probably.
No, I'm all about it.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, if you talk with men when they're by themselves, they will admit they're very insecure. Most of them are very insecure, and it's where they're the most insecure is with their sexuality. And I think we need to talk about that a lot.
Oh, for sure.
I think that. When it comes to the, I did some of my research delved into this. The same-sex people with two men. It seemed that I don't want to speak conclusively on this, but it seemed like that still one took on the role of the initiator or the penetrator, while the other takes on the role of the reception. Of the penetrated.
Right.
So along with all of that, there's a pattern of cathexis, the structuring of sexual desire. What do I do? What do I not do? What's the cultural script tell me I'm supposed to do?
Right.
And of course, with gay men, they can do either.
Right.
They're free to do either. And there was another man that I brought into the mix, Bernie Zilbergeld. You know who he is? He's written Male Sexuality.
Okay.
And he said that, there's times when a male would really like for the woman to take over and be the initiator. In an overt way, not covert way. Right. Because the covert way, they're already doing that.
Right.
Women make themselves available, but it's in a covert way, and it's up to you to initiate the sexual experience.
Right.
If they're initiating it, they're doing it in such a way that it's not recognizable.
Right.
A lot of people are going to have problems with me saying that, and I may be nailed to the cross for saying that. But I used to do an interesting thing with my classes in the gender comm class and the interpersonal. I'd say, I want you to write me an essay, and they'd say, about what? And I said, how do I get laid?
That's awesome.
So I want you to tell me, if you want to get laid,
right,
how do you do it?
Yeah.
What cultural script do you step into? What strategies and resources do you use as a relational being? And I said, and they'll say, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, okay, let's just say that there's a continuum between a one-night stand and getting married. So if you're at the end of the getting married, and let's say it's a religious marriage, one way to get laid is you meet a girl in church, you date her for a couple of years, you get engaged, you visit with the pastor, with your parents, you get married, and you get laid.
Happens.
And that's a kind of a, what is it, consummation of the marriage and all that kind of stuff. It's a
Right.
big deal. And
Yeah.
I don't want to say that that's not a big deal, because
Sure.
that is a big deal.
Yeah.
I think if I had it to do it over again, maybe I could have saved myself from trouble. Variety is not the spice of life when it comes to that. It's confusing. But if you want, or you can go down to the 505 in Pittsburg and buy somebody a drink and take her home and have a one-night stand, and you've gotten laid. But I said in between those two extremes, there's several things.
Oh, right, yeah.
Several,
All cool.
and those are patterns of cathexis, or the structuring of sexual desire. What does the man do? What does the woman do? The culture says, well, here's what you can do, here's what you cannot do.
Right.
If you're a woman, you can't be too eager, because you're going to be labeled as a slut or whatever.
Right.
If you're a male, you have to take on responsibility for initiating that.
Yeah.
It's your, and I think that it trips everybody up. But I said we're not having a conversation about that. And it was interesting. I did a whole study and delivered it at a conference. And the essays came in, and I decoded the essays. I went through and interpreted the essays. And strangely enough, in this particular study, it was the women who wanted emotions left out of the picture.
Strange.
And men wanted emotions into the picture. So the women's justification for the fact that the emotions were not there was because I don't want to be hurt. So it's easier just to have the sex, hit and run, get in and get out. And the men, it was not so easy. That's what came forth through their essays. And if you think about it, porn offers a way for some men to get in and get out, get their rocks off and get out. And there's no vulnerability, there's no involvement, there's no actual talking with another human being.
No connection.
Yeah, about their needs, their fears, the intimacy, and so to have an intimate experience that involves sex, there's a lot of stuff going on there.
What was the word that you used? Catharsis? Was it catharsis or?
Patterns of cathexis.
Cathexis. What's that mean?
Structure. To cathect to something is to bring it close.
Okay.
It's a Freudian term, and it's a pretty abstract term. But it's like cathect. I kind of affect this coffee, or a candy bar, or So there's patterns of, and Robin Connell came up with that in a book called Masculinities, I think, when she was a man. Robert Connell.
The Australian.
Yeah,
Australia.
lady. Yeah. And whether I've used it in the right sense or not, I don't know. I've gotten a lot of mileage out of it. Cause
Sounds good.
Patterns of cathexis means the structuring of sexual desire. So when you step into a sexual encounter, there is a structure.
Okay.
And if it's a one-night stand, you go to the bar.
Right.
You look across the room.
Right. Send a drink over.
You send a drink. Is she looking at you? You can pick up on it.
Yeah.
I have a paper, and I have to be really careful with this because the person who wrote this paper was a woman, and it was dead on. It was one of the most courageous statements I've ever seen made by somebody that was in a gender scholarship. Wow. Where she documented how she went and made herself available in bars. And that's all I'll say about her, except that she was in school, she wrote that paper, and I thought it was a wonderful paper. And she gave me a copy. Years later, I saw her. And at a conference, she said, "Please don't ever tell anybody I wrote that paper." I said, "I won't." But it's a shame It's really a shame. That paper was so powerful and so honest. Again, she retreated back into who she's supposed to be rather than who she is.
Yeah.
In order to save her tenure, her position,
Right.
and what a shame, you know, that happened.
Yeah.
That happens on so many different levels. As a singer-songwriter, I've had my song, I'll take it to a publisher, I'll take it to a radio station, and they'll say, we can't play this stuff. It's great, but it's too damned honest. We can't get away with this. Because the music is all piped in from corporations.
Sure.
So, to me, right now, the most challenging thing for an artist as a singer-songwriter is to say something profoundly true and get it past the gatekeepers and into a place where, and that's what I'm trying to do. But I wrote a song, a couple of years ago, and I'll share the lyrics with you. I don't know whether I can do it without my guitar, but I was thinking of how messy a sexual encounter can be, and he goes, she wants retribution for my sins. She's mad as hell, and it's hard to tell where her anger ends. We tried to be lovers, and now we're never going to be friends because she wants retribution for my sins. I should have thought it over. I should have taken my time before I led her through that door, before we crossed that line. Now we got so much to talk about. Let's see. And we're never going to be friends. She wants retribution for my sins. She's got a funny way of trying to look me in the eye. She wants to talk, but the words won't come, no matter how hard she tries. I did not mean to mislead her. I did not mean to lie. Did not mean to abuse her. Didn't want to make her cry. She wants retribution for my sins. Mad as hell, and it's hard to tell where her anger ends. I got to have my guitar in my hands, but
I'll strum it.
The second verse was even better. It's like, if you want to see, well, I can't think of it. It's a shame because it's a good song.
Yeah.
But and I've sang it at coffee shops and houses, and it doesn't take any side. The guy admits that, you know, I should have thought it over. I shouldn't have done this. I thought I knew her, but I didn't know her at all. And it says, if you want to be lovers, better take your time. Better talk it over before you cross that line. And he's saying that let's talk it over. And in our culture, we don't talk about this stuff.
Right.
It's just not addressed. And that's a tragedy.
Why do you think we don't talk about it? It's too potent. It's too painful, or it's one of the taboo. You know, like we don't talk about that.
Well, since I have a tendency to talk about it, I don't know why we don't. I mean, yeah, there's all those things we can say. It's like it's hard. It's makes us feel vulnerable, shaky, all that kind of stuff. And it doesn't have to be just about sex. We need to talk about immigration, race. We need to talk about health care. We need to talk about, you know, the pharmaceutical industry. We need to talk about child care. You know, and we're not talking about it. And in reality, I do see signs that we're starting to. I don't think it's because we're particularly wanting to. I think it's because we're going to have to.
100%.
Yeah.
There's not another choice.
Yeah. See,
any longer.
I can tell you this about myself. I can't tell you this about anybody else. But I'm a recovering alcoholic, drug addict. I've been sober for 27 years. I didn't stop until I had to.
Right.
You know, because I wanted to live.
Are you familiar with Anne Lamott?
Who?
Anne Lamott.
I've heard the name.
Oh, I think you'd love her.
Yeah.
But she talks about that. She was same thing, recovering alcoholic. And
Yeah.
she said, I think she titled it "The Dark Night of the Soul," but she said the
Oh,
Dark
I have
Night.
heard of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where it's like you run out of any good ideas.
Yeah.
You're out of all your ideas.
You're at the jumping off place.
Yep, exactly.
And so,
Yep.
and Richard Rohr talks about this. Is that the 12 steps of the AA program, they don't have to be. They're not the only game in town, but they are a pretty good game, and they're honest because what is stressed in the Alcoholics Anonymous is honesty with the self, yourself, not somebody else.
Yeah.
And you don't go in there to save your marriage. Some people do that.
Yeah.
You don't go in there because the judge sent you, even though some people do it.
Right.
What happens, they get in there and there's a transformation takes place because they found that, damn, there are people in here telling my story. We need to tell ourselves a new story and see how much we all have in common rather than the differences. Right. One of the things that Marianne Williamson stresses is that we're all alike. We're all human beings. We're all alike. We have the same fears, the same, all that. And some people are going, and I think some people say that's not true, and I don't think this ideological position taken by North Americanism, the individual, they're going to say, "Oh, that's not true. I'm unique."
Yeah, right.
No, I don't think so.
I heard my mentor Adam Ayers once say, he's like, "No one is special because everyone is special."
Right.
It's like,
Right.
well, okay.
Yeah. But well, the solvency is complicated, and probably what solves the problem is realizing that we're not going to solve the problem. But
we should attempt.
The attempt should be made.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though the outcome might not be finalized.
Right. And the outcome is a mystery, and yet we can work toward a more optimal one than we are working toward.
I like it.
Speaking of which,
got rehearsals?
Yeah, he's saying he went to get some cat food.
Oh, there you go.
So he said, yeah.
To wrap up that the sexual talk, I gave 2 big presentations at Pitt State.
Yeah?
I gave one over psychedelics, and the other one was over porn. Those are my 2 big ones. But one book that I just read last month that I think you would be very interested in is called A Billion Wicked Thoughts. And it's 2 data scientists that took all the search results from all these porn sites and then interpreted them through the male, the female, gay. I mean, the data they come up with is fascinating.
What is that called?
It's called A Billion Wicked Thoughts.
A Billion Wicked Thoughts.
You would
love
it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was blown away by it. It's this one right here. It's got that. This is like this whole montage. But
wow.
Man, I mean, it's fascinating. Some of the data that they come up with, and different types of content that people seek out and why. And I mean. Oh,
great! Yeah. So whose class did you address up there?
I think it was one of the first years that they offered human sexuality.
Yeah.
And they, I can't remember, it was an older lady. I can't remember her name. But we just had a bunch of different options to pick from, and we had to like number them. Like, this is the one I want to do, and I was like, porn for sure. That one fascinates me. Like, internet and data and computers fascinate me. I'm like,
yeah. Who is the author?
Ogle August and Sal Gadam.
So how you spell that?
OGL.
OGLAS.
And then Sal, SAL, and then GADDAM. Yeah, you're gonna like that one. I just picked it up. Actually, Jordan Peterson mentioned it because there's a chapter where they break down the top romance novel characters of men, and they boil it down to like the main things.
Yeah.
And the guy is always very rich or has a ton of resources.
Right.
He's always super strong, or he's quiet. He's always like dominating. I think vampire, cowboy, pirate, like those were the main archetypes that would always end up in these romance novels. But
Wow.
yeah, you're gonna love that book.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah. Well, yeah. I better go to the.
Do you have time to go to the studio?
Yeah. How far away is that?
Oh, just a block over.
Yeah. Is he there? Or?
Yep. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to go see it.
Yeah, I'd like to introduce you guys, and then you know where it's at, and he could hook you up. I know he does like a lot of hip hop people, a lot of hip hop artists, but lately he's been doing a lot of country artists.
Yeah,
they've been coming through, and I think it's kind of like one guy comes in and they're like, hey, you need to check this guy out, and then they all come in. So, but you would really like him. So.
Yeah. Let's go check him out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, man. I always really enjoy talking to you.
Yeah.
I mean, our previous podcast, one of my favorite episodes, I've listened to that over and over and over again, just pulling information.
It's still there, right?
Oh, yeah. Actually, some old PSU students found it, and they made comments on it. And I was like, I was happy that they could experience that, too.
Yeah,
so,
cool.
Yep.
Yeah, well, and this one will be out there when?
What is it, Wednesday? By the end of the week.
Okay,
yep.
Cool.
Yep. Be on Spotify and YouTube. Cool. And so then I've been doing clips too. So like some of the stories you told, I'll like isolate that,
right,
like a highlight, so people can watch it. So
cool.
Yeah, man. You're always welcome to come on.
Yeah, well, and I might want to talk with you about some of your expertise on marketing my latest creations.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to help. Yeah.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you. I look forward to next time when you come on. We can talk. We can talk about this book.
Oh, and you have a way of drawing out some great conversations. So
thank you.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
All righty, everybody. Thanks for listening. Episode number 66. Today's Wednesday. Oh, it's March. We're just getting into the new month. No. Oh, I got Nancy Allen coming on later this month. Do you know Nancy Allen?
No.
She's an author that wrote. She wrote a crime book, and then she's been writing with James Patterson, but she's from this area. Yeah, kind of cool.
Check her out.
Kind of cool. Yeah. J.W. Wright, black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, should be on this month, and we got a couple other. Devin Paraida's going to come on, another black belt, and so March is going to be cool. So, all right, hope you enjoyed the podcast today. Love all you people. Have a great week. Peace.
In her smile, the way she moves her hips, they know that it's true, that she's young and she's on fire. She's so young and she's on fire. She's young and she has desire. She doesn't even have to try. Well, the castles, they're on fire, and baby, this lets them burn. Yeah, the kings and the queens, they're crying. It's a lesson they must learn. And baby, she's just like the poetry that gets written in the ocean sand. But when the tide washes the words away, the world still understands. Yeah, they know that it's true, that she's young and she's on fire. She's so young and she's on fire. She's young and she is desire. For now, that is. She gonna get fat and ugly, just like the rest of us. Oh, it's bound to happen, baby. Yeah, it's just a matter of time.
Sci-Fi wins.